Well. The trolls are back. Good to see you guys. Yes, it's 6 p.m. on the east coast of Australia. You're 2.5. That was must have been earlier. That's right, because you're 2.5 hours behind in that regard, or 2 hours. Let me correct myself. Oh, for some reason that server failed. Whatever. And beyond the clowning around, do we have any questions? Triggered. Yeah, it doesn't take much for a response. Appropriate nickname? Good to see some of my favorite characters back. Are we actually going to ask any questions? So why are you here? Take off the blinkers. Well, I have no fucking idea. That is sort of the for a universal experience. Sort of contemplation and relaxation. An in-depth understanding of the nature of existence. I have a question. Fantastic. And finally made it. Good. Why did the insulin dose in carnivore experiment not shoot down ketones, metabolism, fatty acid? I'm trying to remember which one was this question. That's right. That's the experiment that Cahill did. That is precisely it. Because pretty much when there's a difference between a physiological response, that means when your actual pancreas is basically releasing insulin to bring down sugar, there is a sort of a set mechanism in your pancreas. Remember, there are receptors in there that are actually coated with zinc. So you've got these positive ions that are controlling this reaction. So you can't at the same time actually produce glucagon, in a sense, to the like a high response of glucagon or a high response of insulin. So you're in a state where glucagon is very high, and then all of a sudden, insulin is fired into the system and lowers blood sugar quite a bit. So in a diabetic with diabetes 1, you've got no insulin. So what happens is you get this sort of runaway acidosis because you've got high sugar, high basically fatty acids, and so you end up with this high level of what is called a ketoacidosis. But when you're suppressing, when your glucagon is up, so your production you end up with both in the system in high amounts. But the thing is, they only infuse a certain dose to bring down glucose. That means the small amount of glucose that was in the blood system. So this wasn't a massive spike in insulin. It was a much more lower spike, small amount, to basically suppress that small amount of sugar that was in the system. So it had a very marginal effect on glucagon. So that's the reason why you didn't have the issue with the loss of free fatty acids, because there was still enough glucagon there, and the signaling was still there to basically release free fatty acids. So that's why these people did not have some sort of shutdown in function. And remember, even though and a lot of people are sort of focused on ketones, they go, well, okay, then ketone production should stop. Well, if glucagon's still there, that's not going to be the case. So this is an artificially infused thing rather than something that's actually coming from the same body itself. That means the signaling molecules that are actually controlling the pancreatic release and the balance between glucagon and insulin, that ratio, that's actually been circumvented. It's like putting a clamp on part of the system to prevent, the ability for the system, like a muscle, to take up more glucose or in that regard, things like that. You get some unusual sort of behaviors and unusual sort of results in experiments that would not happen in normal physiology. And, like the, clamping and that sort of issue, the muscle issue that a lot of the pro-sugar sort of lobby promote, in reality, in nature, you would not have that sort of clamp that would stop the ability of glucagon to provide sugar and fatty and fats to basically maintain in the muscle the other part of the energy. So that's something equivalent. So this is not a natural sort of response or a natural sort of behavior. And they knew this because glucagon was still high. They could actually read it. They tested it and they knew exactly where glucagon was. So that wasn't the issue at all. So it's that's why I use the analogy of the diabetes, people with diabetes 1, that you can have this sort of effect of high sugar, high free fatty acids at the same time, and it's sort of, we call it the sort of ketoacidosis thing, this extreme non-normal sort of response. So by basically allowing the actual a certain level and of glucagon in the system that was still high, that just came a bit down, not much, because insulin was only infused for a very short amount of time. And for them, they were taking measurements. So eventually the system sort of responds, and that additional gluconeogenesis will happen, and as a consequence, things will come back to base sort of level. So this is an experiment just to show that you do not need sugar to run your body. But also it actually provided a big insight into the other study the Russian study that I talked about with the guy with Bart, in regards about free fatty, about fats getting past the blood-brain barrier. There's this sort of thing that maybe only 20% get through, or a certain amount and all that, but that doesn't make physiological sense. If you've got very little sugar in the system because you've pushed it down, but you've still got a certain level of ketones in the system, there's just not enough energy for the brain to work unless it takes up more free fatty acid. So how much fat the brain can use, I don't believe it's 100%, but it's very high compared to rats. So, and unless somebody else can prove otherwise, they are basically talking nonsense. So in that regard, the experiment did not, if for instance there were that insulin that it got infused, a small amount of insulin, just to drop that low, because remember, these people fasted, so they had very low blood sugar. So that reduction, you don't need a lot of insulin to infuse in. But let's say, for instance, they would have recorded that. So that infusion, that artificial infusion directly into the bloodstream, did not have the effect, because you've got the pancreas was in the whole digestive system. So there's a whole lot of signaling that actually happens directly from the gut, because there are like little brain cells in the gut directly to the brain. So if you're putting it in there is a certain lag of time in terms of signaling. The thing is, you have to realize that in the bloodstream, it's really hard to work out what's what in terms of quantity. This is where, when we talk about the Randle cycle, when you get a lot of sugar and a lot of fat in the blood, which isn't a good thing. But the thing is, if the body was that smart and had such profound signaling capacity within the bloodstream, it happens. A lot of the signaling is actually happening outside, at those entry points, because that is the normal way you get food in. It's through those entry points. So that's where all the actual signaling and all that, the receptors on your tongue, and you go, oh. And that's why another reason why you can put a sweetener, an alcohol sweetener, on your tongue, and you can spike insulin in your body without any sugar actually entering the system, because the sensors told the body there's sugar coming in. But if I infuse it directly into your blood, the sensors have not picked it up. So in a sense, they didn't know that insulin was being released, because the pancreas didn't send any signal through back to the brain. But the body was able to use that additional energy of fats in the system, in circulation, took them up. So upregulated those pathways, or the blood-brain barrier, took up more out of the system, out of the circulating, nutrients, in this case, free fatty, in this case, fats that were circulating in the system. It's no different. You've got in every single cell, you've got basically your GLUT4 for sugar. You've got your CD36, which is basically fats. And so these receptors will come to the surface of the cell and actually upregulate to a certain level to pull in more nutrients. If for instance, they're full, then they'll basically just snap closed like that and basically say, well, we as a cell, that cell will say, I'm insulin resistant now. I'm not allowing stuff in because I'm full. I have enough energy. Fuck off, And if all the cells do that, then you're basically insulin resistant. Now, chronic insulin resistance, when you're doing that every day, you're eating a whole lot of fat and sugar continuously. But if you do it periodically, or go over the level that your body needs, then that's like the gradient of how much resistant. And that can be very, sporadic, or for a certain small amount of time, and then disengage, and take out the stuff. It's pretty much, you don't want a lot of circulating sugar. Why? Because of the glycating effects. Glucose, less of a problem, because it's 0.8%. Fructose is higher, which is 3.75. So the percentages are much higher. The actual threshold is 4.7 times. So it has more glycating capacity, and that's why it's more problematic. So it's the resident time, because of having too many, which makes the how long that state of Randle cycle activation actually exists, and then the amount of circulation, how much basically gradient that is, which means it takes far longer to come down to the level where it will switch over, and those receptors will upregulate to take in more, because they need to take in more energy. So that's a long sort of going down the Randle cycle sort of side as well. But, the body's interrelated in all these sort of wonderful ways. So it's really important to sort of understand and have an understanding of this. But the whole idea of the reason why I brought that up was to show quite clearly that while in rats, they can only take fats up to 20%, with humans, we don't know. But if you could suppress glucose to very low levels, and you know that ketone production can only get to 18%, and then you basically are interfering slightly at a very little minuscule level, the liver will get a response that there's a bit of insulin, but because it's very small, it'll drop off. It may just slightly drop glucagon, and gluconeogenesis, just slightly a bit. So it's not going to be massive. So your ketones may drop from, let's say, 18% of energy, maybe to 16 or 17. It's going to be very small for a very small amount of time. So it's not a big issue. It's different if you're basically putting it through your actual digestive system, and all the signaling pathways were being fired off and telling the brain this is happening, and the liver this is happening. That's a different thing. We're bypassing that, and that's why we end up with this other unusual situation. But what do we learn? We learn that the threshold for utilization of fats in the brain is much higher than we've ever known or ever thought. And unfortunately, we can't do experiments on humans, and that's why anymore. And that's why it's really hard to know exactly what the threshold is. But I use those examples in particular to basically say, well, you guys are stating this. I can actually show something completely different. So, your hypothesis is shit, because I can show a paradox. I can show something which does not follow. That means if I do an experiment and get a different result, it means that the initial hypothesis is wrong. So the hypothesis that we use very little fatty acid, because we know if we do the same sort of experiment to rats, they're fucked. But with humans, they're not. So where's the threshold? Fucked if I know. But I can tell you, it's not 20%, which all these so-called vegetarian academics and everybody else talks about. They're wrong. But where exactly is it? Is it 60%? Is it, I'm thinking, let's say ketones, we say about 20 odd percent as an example. Let's say you knocked back the sugar to much lower levels. Let's say you get about 20. Could it be up to 70%? Potentially. Maybe there's enough energy in already the actual mitochondria in the brain. And so even that slightly drop until it opens up the blood-brain barrier to pull in more nutrients, the time delay. So, and even there, time delay, you're only going to probably be pulling in anywhere between 10, 15, maybe at most 20% more. So at a minimum, it should be 50 to 60% utilization, which is basically about pretty much nearly 3 times that of a rat of fats that the brain can utilize. So at least we can say that with some certainty, because these people would have failed in the same way as the rat if that wasn't the case. So, but that's all we can say, based on extrapolating from these experiments and, using logic and trying to extrapolate. But that's all we can do, or what I've done anyway. But beyond that point, we can't say anything beyond that point. Yes, maybe we need some Ruskies to go into Kazakhstan to do some experiments. Unlikely. They'll be brought up on war crimes or some bloody thing like that in the UN. So it's not going to happen, guys. So let's just say it's a hell of a lot more than what they've been saying in the past. So, yep. Okay, when did drinking like mead, beer, wine make it into the ancient Greek diet? I've got no fucking idea, to be honest. Wine was there earlier. Beer, I'm not actually sure. I know that beer was actually being manufactured in Egypt, and I suspect beer could have been earlier than wine. So you've got wine from the Middle East. So we're talking about like Babylon, Samaria, those sort of areas. The sort of what we would call northern type Arabia or the Levantine, that sort of area. Egypt beer. But it's really hard to. It definitely was in different periods. So there was definitely in the Minoan, because the Minoans traded with the actual, and that's, well over 3,000 BC, so that's 5,000 years. So it could be anywhere up to 5.5 to 6,000 years that beer at least existed, and I would say wine is probably about the same time, or maybe a bit earlier, or maybe a bit later. So it's been. Now, as far as mead goes, I have no fucking idea, because I've never looked into it. Simple as that. So, but I suspect it would have been maybe at the same time, because honey was being utilised in that time. Seasonal honey was available, and there's actually murals on temples and stuff like that, which shows the use of honey. So we know that honey was being used. Now, whether mead, do not know, do not compute. So yeah, on as far as the actual origin or the actual usage of mead in the Greek world, yeah, no idea, to be honest. It's all I have. If you remember your short conversation, I don't. Sorry. If you do, write me a comment or send me an email, please, and I will respond. It's much easier with emails, because then I can actually I can refer to something. There's just so many things that happen in my life, like everyone's, but everything's sometimes a blur. And how lean is too lean too fast? I suspect you're talking about lean body mass. There is a threshold where you will get a quite clear response from your system that you are ravenously hungry. So if you get below a certain level of fat, to very low percentages we're talking about, and it does vary between genetics between people. So hard to say, some people 13, some people less than 13, some people even to even lower levels. It really sort of varies. Exactly what amount is hard to say. That your body will actually respond and start signaling these really hunger type signals, where you are like a jackrabbit running around trying to find calories. Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I did actually look at that once. There's some certain genes. At some point, I'll do something about in regards to lean body mass and certain genetics and their interactions. So, but that's for a later date. So, hey there, number one troll. I suspect that's what it is. Yep. And your number two troll. Yes, we know that. Good to see you both here, bigots. So, let alone this is war. This is war, Daniel. I have a signal on Harry. You haven't. You. Another question? Yes. I can expect the next week I'll be trolled even further. I'm not lean. Don't be silly. I wish I was. Like when I was actually in my youthful days as a 16-year-old. I did scan photos at work, and I've got them on my work machine, and I haven't actually copied them over to this machine. So I will do it at some stage, and you'll see what a skinny little runt I was, just as skinny like Luke Gears. So yes, I think I can't remember whether I was 15. I think I may have been 15 at that stage. So yeah, yes, those were the years. Yes, I have to get to that level, but at the same time, I'm far more muscular um, than that. But I do have, still a bit of weight to knock off in that regard. I've knocked off a lot of weight, but close to nearly 20 odd kilos. But I've still got a bit more to lose. But also, I still want to build a bit more muscle, which, I need to motivate myself a bit more to do a bit more, sort of maybe now that the gyms are back open, try and get in and try and actually start doing a bit more to try and build up. Because I'm in that age now where I'm in my mid-50s, and between now and my mid-60s, I really need to sort of bulk up a bit and build a bit more muscle for robustness in later years, because the biggest decline really comes after 65. Your taurine levels drop through the toilet, and a lot of other things. So for me, it's really important that I use strategically the next decade to build up more sort of muscle mass to basically protect myself in those older years. That's my sort of focus, and if I can actually the myonuclei in the actual muscle. I mean, my father had big, massive muscles when he was young, so he had massive amounts of myonuclei. So when the muscle memory immediately, when you get beyond 40, it's really hard to build more myonuclei. That means the capacity to build more muscle mass, so you have to really work much harder. So it's, I don't envy myself completely. And sometimes the motivation isn't 100% there, unfortunately. So it is a struggle. Let's go. So then you eat cheese, keeps him IQ low. Take off your blinkers. God, that's next level troll. Oh. Thanks. Did not know that glucagon and insulin produce activity completely. Yep. So the ratio is not disturbed so much. Still in fat burning. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's But if you were to basically activate it from those receptors, I don't know what would happen. So that would be interesting. But the idea was to basically show that their idea, remember, they really didn't know how much ketones the body was what level the body was able to produce in terms of ketones. And this was a really, I think, I can understand why you wouldn't be able to do the experiment nowadays, is because there were risks involved. But they had a lot of doctors there to infuse massive amounts of glucose back into the people and revive them if they actually went into a coma. But it didn't happen because they were fat adapted and they were taking up whatever ketones were there, plus massive amounts of fats as well. I tend to think that it's probably 70%, but you know what? I don't care. Even if it's 50 or 60%, it's still quite a lot. It's still more than people say that you basically need, like 100% glucose. So it still defeats that argument completely. It kicks it in the teeth and basically leaves it on the sidewalk as a piece of nonsense. So as far as I'm concerned, that's been proved. Yep. The anabolic effects of fat are very low. The anabolic effects of small amount of protein like exists in brie is also, and then when you look at carbs, which is the most anabolic thing that you can actually put in your body, that's next to nothing. So 100 grams, or let's say 200 grams of brie, which is basically 7 ounces of brie, basically have just one single gram of carbohydrate, and that's glucose. We're not talking about fructose. It's in the form of glucose, because all galactose, all milk carbohydrates or dairy carbohydrates will convert through 4 pathways. They will convert to glucose, and you'll lose a bit on the way. The problem is nobody's measured exactly how much, so we don't know. So whether you actually, from 1 gram, you get a total gram, or you get 0.8 or something like that, no idea, because nobody's ever done the experiment to actually show how much galactose actually gets converted. We don't know into glucose and how much gets lost in that conversion process. So there's a lot of question marks. There's a lot of areas of science where we have shit loads of question marks. And it's going to be many years, and it's going to be very interesting for all of us to learn all these things, because there's shitloads more to learn. We are still fucking primitives in terms of our understanding of how the body works and a lot of mechanisms. And we are just starting now to peel the onion off, so to speak, of knowledge in terms of human physiology, let alone at the subatomic level, what's happening. We've got big, massive question marks in regards to, light and how that interacts. The sort of modulation of, melanopsin over time in years as you get older. You skin issues. Do those receptors change? What is the signaling? What degradation? There's so many bloody questions about this because we haven't really looked into a lot of this sort of stuff. And so with aging, if you're not getting enough fat soluble vitamins to regulate properly those basically those collagen degrading enzymes, and you're not basically structuring your skin tissue appropriately, then you're going to have these malformations and potentially disrupting receptors in their structures, and maybe that has an effect, a downstream effect. So a lot of things we don't know. So my sort of idea is to sort of maximize and try and keep those things. I'll actually do an experiment once, because also niacin does actually help, because it increases the redox potential. One thing that declines over age is all these redoxes, the NAD, NAD plus, that sort of cycling of electrons to push them along the electron chain through all these different sort of steps around the complexes. So those sort of issues, the efficiency over time and all that, and how we can improve that. And it seems like there's also good evidence to show that skin elasticity, skin firmness, and all that is also enhanced with niacin as well. I have my little bouts of niacin now and then, and I go all red all over. And even when I've had food, and I'll actually do the experiment once, and you'll actually see I turn like a fucking beetroot. So you can have a bit of fun and a few laughs. So I'll do that, but I've had to have a meal just before the actual live stream, and then take the niacin, because you need you need to basically dilute it so it doesn't go as rapidly, because otherwise I'd be on the ground scratching myself like a nut. So yes, fun and games, the things you do for youthfulness and not immortality, but extending life, keeping yourself young. Crazy things that I do. Anyway, you'll learn on my trip as we move forward. So basically I've got less wrinkles than I had about a decade ago, and more firmness, skin elasticity. It's really firm, tight, and all that sort of stuff. There's no sagginess. It's firm. And I mean, I've shown you guys plenty of times, the level of firmness, it just pops back immediately, so that usually happens in a younger person. I'm attempting to see whether I can actually reverse my years to half, but I'm pushing a lot of different pathways, and I'm being very careful about it as well, not being stupid about it, because there are the similar pathways, cancer and all sorts of other things. So you have to be really careful the way you do these things. And I do them periodically in a certain controlled way and have a bit of fun. But, it has to be with knowledge. You do not do these things without knowledge and put yourself at harm. There's diminishing returns. You can do something and you can get some advantage. You can do something slightly incorrect, the same thing, but slightly incorrect, and you could basically lose years or lose advantage. So you got to know what you're doing. So a lot of this sort of stuff that I do and all the questions that I answer and the additional information that I provide is the whole idea is I'm moving towards trying to explain more to you guys, try to understand and demystify things in a very, easy to understand way, and then slowly transition you guys to better knowledge to be able to do more things for your own selves and your families as well. G'day, mate. Trouble. Yeah, troll and trouble. Fantastic. Look, the night is looking up. And good morning from the UK. Just woke up, mate. Bloody hell. You must have had a late night last night. Not completely lean. In some places, very thick and strong. And large. These trolls are really giving you a hard time, Daniel, aren't they? Fucking hell. Bird brain. A real question, not joking. Does the Randle cycle kick in when drinking alcohol? Not really. I mean, if you drink alcohol and you've had no other food or whatever, you may have at the end of the day, the Randle cycle only kicks in when all your cells in your body, and they'll be at a different rate. So one cell here and the cell next door, one could be in a state of, Randle cycle activation. That means it will downregulate the CD36, which is the one that brings fat in. And then you've got the other receptor, which is the GLUT4, that brings, basically glucose in and vitamin C. And so they will get downregulated. And this is the problem with the Randle cycle. When you are constantly engaging it, you're actually taking in less vitamin C. This is why these fucktards get low-grade scurvy as well. You only have to take a look at a lot of the actual, diabetics and all that. Same reason. That's basically they are really undermining those receptors to be able to function physiologically in the normal range, and they're not getting sufficient nutrients in. They're starving their body. So, because you still need to take in other things, and these people are causing all sorts of problems. But in terms of Randle cycle, with alcohol, you would have to consume quite a bit. Alcohol actually converts to fat. So what will happen is when you take in, so let's say you have nothing else other than alcohol. You eat nothing else. And you haven't had a meal for a while. So there's no circulating, it was 4 hours ago since your last meal. There's no circulating glucose, no circulating fat that's coming from the mouth. Okay. So You start drinking alcohol. The alcohol basically will hit your system, go to the liver, get converted to fat, and pretty much get exported in as VLDL into the bloodstream. And then what will happen is the cells will take it up, the energy. If the cells are quite full, then you'll be engaging the Randle cycle. You'll be basically down-regulating those receptors in the majority of your cells around the body. And so at a certain period of time when you have quite a bit of circulating fat in the system, the body will store that fat. But because alcohol also requires a lot of energy to be converted to fat and will spend quite a bit of energy, utilize quite a bit of energy, you will not engage the Randle cycle as an alcoholic. What you'll end up becoming is very catabolic, because you'll be using so much energy to convert the shit and to detox the shit that your cells will take up all that energy and need more. And that's why a pure sugar diet, like a fruitarian diet or an alcohol diet, because there's only a few percentage points of alcohol, okay? So, that amount of energy is just not enough to cover billions of cells in the body. So but if you combine it with a big carbohydrate meal, most of that will you'll end up engaging the Randle cycle, because you've hit your threshold of too much energy in the circulating the system. The cells can't take up any more. They've already taken it up. You'll have some of that fat that will come from chylomicrons. So at the actual, the inner part of your intestine on the other side is where you have all these little chylomicrons that are residing, and they get pushed in through the lymphatic system every about 10 minutes. So they'll go circulate, they'll go around using the lymphatic system, they'll give their energy and then go back through the bloodstream, because their last call will be via the heart and then back through to the liver, and then pretty much they may be exported again out, whether the liver will store some because it's got storage capacity, or how much it'll store and how much it'll release into the bloodstream again. It depends on a whole lot of factors. It's like anything, if it's got more, it'll release more. If it's got less, it'll take up more and then release less. And if it needs some substrate, it'll convert it. So it depends on a whole lot of factors. But if you have a big fucking meal and a whole lot of alcohol, that'll pretty much fatten you up. Most alcoholics don't eat. They just don't eat. That's why they waste away, like the vegans that are just eating fruit. Not enough energy, So that's what really happens. And all they end up is, because they've got high insulin, all they end up is a skinny fat. And the fuckers also don't need salt. And you usually hear fruitarians say, oh, you don't need salt. And they're right. You don't. Remember the thing that I did with Pim on Walter Kempner. His experiments, very low salt, very high sugar, very low protein, very low, because you've got such high insulin and such water retention and electrolyte retention. The last thing you want is to basically put in any more electrolytes and actually cause even higher retention and blood pressure. So Walter understood this, and that is why he used to recommend, the only supplement he'd recommend was iron and nothing else. And pretty much, and some other supplements, that because it is a deficient diet, he knew that. It was for a therapeutic purpose of a specific type of kidney disease, which is a rare type of kidney disease that standard practice wouldn't work at the time. I mean, now we know that a ketosis diet will correct the same thing. Again, because it's so high in fat, a therapeutic ketosis diet is so high in fat, you basically will have, the sort of, you won't be engaging that Randle cycle, and so it won't be a problem. So it depends. So no, if you're basically just drinking alcohol as a fucking alcoholic, which I bet you are, but if you're putting down a whole lot of fucking carbs at the same time, then you're fucked. Oh, Bart's in the stream, mate. Do you want to come on? Let me know. I'll send you a link. Do these people want kibble? Yeah, maybe. You never know, mate. You never know. Oops. Overshot. Damn. I hate when I overshoot. Hi, mate. Previous stream still having enough allowance for this week. Yeah, look, just the way it is. It's a matter of having time. Look, when I was actually really in deep ketosis, I mean, I was having like my highest ketones were 3.8 or whatever, and I was doing a sort of like a therapeutic, which was a bit ridiculous at the time. But I was focused on things like iodine, selenium. I was supplementing some of that stuff. I didn't have the coldness or anything like that, I can tell you, and I slept like a baby. So, but it's not something that I would recommend, this sort of therapeutic nonsense. You don't have underlying issues. It's not needed. And I did only that for about a month, and I actually wondered why I actually did it in the first place. So we do stupid things. Yes. Well, I do sometimes. Who said you aren't? I make up the rules. You're number one. Troll. My troll. Could you explain a bit that methylation process benefited? Typical issue I saw on the video. Okay. What I showed in that study was that, and it's a randomized control study, that when, and this is only for the alleles, which is basically in the British Isles about 11 odd percent. Some areas is a bit higher. Some areas in the Mediterranean, it's about 12 odd percent that have got these SNPs. In Germany or Scandinavia and all that, it's about 6%. Just trying to remember now, looking up in the stars, trying to remember the figures. Anyway. Oh my God. It's on average, it's anywhere between 5% that have got these SNPs in populations, right up to certain populations can get as high as 20 odd percent that have got this specific SNP, the two TT or AA. So just think AA or TT is interchangeable with CG, so swap them back and forward. And when you've basically homozygous of TT allele, you have the worst sort of in terms of folate metabolism and stuff like that, and usually because you have issues at that level, you usually tend to have worse circumstances of clearing homocysteine. But when you increase riboflavin in the diet, that problem goes away completely. The mechanism isn't completely understood in a very well way. I've always said that one pathway actually uses B6, B12, folate, and riboflavin has a controlling or regulating role depending on your SNPs. So specifically for those SNPs, it really, homocysteine just plummets. But for the other type of alleles, it's just statistical noise. There's no much difference. So in that regard, it's only specifically these MTHFR are specifically for people like myself and others that have got these SNPs. I suspect Carnivore Yogi has got the same issue, and she just needs to basically increase her riboflavin to deal with that problem. It's simple as that. I probably should send her an email and just say that and give her a link to my video, and so she can see the study. Because everybody, everybody spends far too much money with too many gurus and all that. Humans for thousands and thousands of fucking years ate a species-appropriate diet, which is very high in riboflavin, and had no issues whatsoever. And she may have to eat organ meats, whether she fucking likes it or not, because she's got those underlying SNPs. Tough luck. You want your health, you want to be better, woman up or man up and just basically eat the organ meats because you have bigger requirements for them, But, it's just the way it is. Life is a bitch, unfortunately. You got to leave. Anyway, hope to see you next week or the week after, possibly the week after when I have my next Euro. It's going to be, I'm going to try about the next one an hour sort of later. And Jared said he's going to try and get on at the time. So we'll see how that goes. We'll try and actually, he may even jump on later on tonight, or my tonight. He's early in the morning, where he's at. So, because at the moment, what is it? I think he said 5. What did he say? 5:30. So it's 6:30 now. So he'd be probably up in about an hour-ish or something like that, potentially. So we may see him. You never know. The other key thing to maintaining into old age are flexible joints and muscles. Yep, look, exercise is important. I sort of am a believer in, like Ben Greenfield and people like that you really have to move those muscle groups like you would work. If you look at populations that always use their whole body, they tended to basically strengthen all these different muscles and tend to be far more robust. Where people that do all these isolation exercises and all that tend to actually sustain more injuries. So, yep, you may be able to bulk up in certain parts for bodybuilding competition, but unless you're actually doing bodybuilding competition, why the fuck are you doing it? So is my sort of argument. So I think things like where you're pulling things, there are objects like bars where you can actually pull them as if you're pulling an object or pushing things. Those sort of things you can. Some of the exercise that Sean Baker does where he lifts those big weights and throws them off over his back and stuff like that. Those sort of things are sort of more natural. You're engaging a lot of different muscles in your back, in your arms, in your legs because you have to firmly hold your whole skeleton in a certain way. So all these sort of things are much more helpful to basically maintain good functioning of those things without putting them under excessive strain or injury or whatever else. So I think good nutrition and that sort of natural type movements and natural type stresses, because stresses are important on the body. Weight is important because it actually strengthens bones, gravity, So I think that those sort of things are the things that we need to focus on, and all this other airy-fairy stuff, people, what do you need a specialist to basically tell you how to basically walk or how to basically lift something? For fuck's sake, humans have been doing it for thousands of years, moving all body. We only get injured when we start doing all these sort of really, repetitive, absurd type, isolation type things, activities, so don't do it. Not worth it. Nice and subs. Give me flushes as well, Harry. Itching as well. I took some from housemate. Never again. Yeah, look, it's a hard gig, I can tell you. It's a very fucking hard gig in that regard. So I do it about twice a week and have fun doing it. Not really. Don't believe me. It's a lie. No fun at all. Yes. It's, yeah. Anyway, the things we do for youthfulness and other things. Anyway, maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't. I'll find out in a couple of years' time. You'll notice it as we progress and move along, how successful some of this shit that I do is or not. And give it another year. And if you see that things are getting even better than what they were the previous year, then maybe you jump on and just bite the bullet. It's up to you. At the end of the day, I'm just here for the information. The way what you do with your body is your business. Bart's out and around about late. He's actually Bart's how can I put it? He tends to be a bit of a night owl, a bit like me as well. I've actually got genetics that actually prove that I tend to have that condition. So I have to fight against that natural wanting. I don't know whether Bart may as well. No idea. And I'm ready. Coffee, brie. yes, perfect combination, Mm. You could actually even cut small strips of the brie and just dip it in the coffee. That'd be interesting. Probably it'd melt. Look, yeah, it'd probably end up a mess. Don't do it. Don't do it. I'm just being facetious and stupid. Good on you, mate. That's what look, all of us that are on a species appropriate diet and don't have all this sugar inflammation in our system are getting better to different rates. Everyone, there are genetic differences and stuff like that, but yep. And Harry, can you explain? I'm trying to remember what is. Do you mean indoleamin 2 dehydrogenase 2? That one? I suspect. Maybe. No? Both for ID1 and ID2, there's a lot of, I will do something on the stuff at some point. There's a lot of confused information. Let's put it that way. So, and it would take too long to explain. So I will do a vid on it to go through and look at some of the studies and all that, and some of the contradictory stuff as well. So I'm not going to make half a statement in that regard. So bags of bones. Be nice to each other. Uncle Bart's offering kibble to the kiddies. Yes. What's shaking, kiddies? I feel youthful. Thanks, Bart. See, he's a good uncle. I just felt 10 years younger. We're at the bottom. God, that was quick. What just happened? Does what? Gives me small red blood spots in the skin, burning for 1 hour. For me, it's only half an hour. You're not having it on an empty stomach, are you? God, one for punishment. Eat food, then have niacin. Otherwise, it is fucking very painful. All gone. Oops. Oh, shit. Hit the wrong one. It just moved. Yep. It will happen. I've got the cortisol. I want to do a cortisol one tomorrow. There's a couple of others that I'm actually looking at trying to get in there at the same time. But I've actually got all the stuff for the cortisol one, so I'm gonna bloody do that tomorrow. I've said that I may do one or two others, but you know, the IDO will be sometime next week. And I've got a couple of others that I'm trying to put together, and I've half done a couple and I sort of don't like them and I'm maybe have to redo them, and I found some additional information. So it's always, yeah, sometimes I think I just should do, I've done a couple with part 1 and part 2 and stuff like that. But what about mTOR? Mammalian targeting rapamycin. Usually increases with aminos, due to aminos, but that's a good thing, because if basically TOR is too low, your body's very catabolic, not a good thing to be in a state of catabolism continuously. Too high, it's in an anabolic and growth way, far too much. So your glucagon to insulin ratio, if you're just having a steak, is going to be 1.3. If you're just having a potato, is going to be, which is starch, is going to be 4. And if you're having an all-you-can-eat, perfect Randle cycle meal, like a McDonald's or whatever, it could be up as high as 70, the ratio. So, and remember, insulin goes in lockstep with IGF-1, because IGF-1 and insulin in primitive organisms was one thing. It used to be called insulin IGF-1. It only over evolutionary time it's separated, but they are interrelated. So the higher the insulin, the higher the IGF-1. The thing that actually increases that is basically higher levels of Randle cycle activation. So if you're eating shit, you're going to have much higher levels. So mTOR from meat is not an issue. It's a non-issue, because the thing that drives mTOR to high levels is basically sugar and, engaging the Randle cycle. So really, it's, an all-you-can-eat buffet of refined sugars and fats, seed oils and shit like that. That will basically get you up to the ratio of 70, and that will actually push not only IGF-1 to very high levels, but also mTOR, because IGF-1 and insulin do have a strong effect on mTOR. So low levels of mTOR, low levels of IGF-1, and low levels of insulin will basically help you achieve more muscle protein synthesis. So, which is a good thing. And you can eat as much, You're going to well over 10%, 20%, or even 30%, and the levels will be quite low in comparison to an all-you-can-eat buffet of crap. So it's a non-issue. Everybody that talks about mTOR being an issue, they're talking shit, because I say, show me one experiment where meat alone on its own in a large quantity, where you're having protein at about 30, 35%, and where mTOR, IGF-1, and insulin are very high levels. They're not, because there's not one study, and never will there be, because it would defy normal physiology. So it's just crap. So that's why they use these mixed diets of people that are on a fucking sad diet, and they go, oh, look at mTOR, look at this. Again, this reductionist bullshit, of a whole lot of fucking fat McDonald's clients. I mean, for fuck's sake, it's just a joke. And then they actually put these people in their studies to against somebody on a vegetarian diet. Obviously, somebody on a vegetarian diet is going to come out a hell of a lot better looking than somebody that's eating this garbage and activating all these growth pathways to very high levels continuously, day in, day out, 365 days in a year for multiple decades. I mean, yeah, it's a fucking joke. Nutrition science is basically, to say the least. Okay, do you know if humic minerals from old plant matters have oxalates in them? Nope, no idea. Absolutely no idea. I don't think so, but no idea. I have actually bought those sort of minerals, and I've used them in the past, and colloidal minerals as well. So, but no idea. I suspect not, because oxalate would degrade. So unlikely. But you never know. There could be a bit there. If you do come across something, email it to me. I'd be very interested. Love your drill down video. Take your M8 and we can wait. Look, I'm trying to make them as, as straightforward and not complicated. There's no, and even with the science, I mean, sometimes even this time I didn't need to show that. I could have just said, look, there's a study that shows this, and just show that diagram of that drop and not even show the study at all. Just basically refer to the actual part of the study in that. I'm trying to avoid making it too complicated. It's sort of, at the end of the day, you guys need to know what works and what doesn't, and then basically implement it in your life so you can basically get the benefits. Unless somebody wants to become a biochemist or, something like that, that's a different thing. But this isn't a general thing on that. I know that Bart's got a number of videos in regards to some of the biochemical pathways and all that, and explains all that on his Patreon thing. If somebody wants to learn more in-depth stuff, go there. I'm trying to, initially I threw a lot of terms in the beginning and all that, and I realized that people were not understanding certain things because they were asking me similar questions, and now I'm trying to simplify the message so people can understand more about these sort of things. Anyway, so we've already discussed that. Nanomotors, we've already discussed things like that. Now, what's this one? Tried Harry's jelly yesterday. Cream and 1.2 litres with new season strawberry. Once prepared, added a thin slice of ice cream. Okay, yeah, fair enough. Cinnamon. That's not going to be a lot of carbs anyway. And grated dark chocolate on top. Fucking hell, mate. You went out of your way. So must have been luxurious. You're making me jealous. Yeah, pretty much that crap. Yeah, yes. What do you think about longevity studies and protein restrictions? The BS, the reductionist BS based on rats to tell you nothing. When they try to actually apply these studies where they can double the life of a rat or increase the rat to 30%, and then they try and replicate this on humans, it doesn't work. Does not work. When you do the NR and the NMN type precursors and you utilize those, the uptake is piss poor. And when it goes through the gut, unless you can actually bypass the gut, it degrades. It gets broken down by the stomach, and you don't actually get the precursors, or you get very little. So it doesn't really work. And then the amount that they gave to the rats was levels that are really hard to supplement. Where niacin, on the other hand, because remember, even NR, nicotinic riboside, and NMN, and some of the other nicotinamide, all those sort of things are like precursors to nicotinic acid. And nicotinic acid is what niacin is. So it's the sort of stuff that I get, which gives you that flush. Well, that goes into the body like that. Within taking it, within about 5-10 minutes, you're getting, it's gone everywhere. That's how bioavailable it is. It's the equivalent, I would use the argument, the equivalent to all these BS MK7 that sits in the blood and never goes anywhere, and a lot of people doesn't even get fucking converted or poorly converted and gets poorly utilized, and then MK4 that just vanishes in seconds. Well, not seconds, but really fast. It has very low resident time, again, because it's something that the body wants and loves and takes up. And when you put nicotinic acid and you increase your NAD plus, which is what declines with age, and the capacity to generate energy, it looks at that and goes, fuck, I'll take that. I'll take all that nicotinic acid, that niacin, just give it to me. Bring it here. I want to basically increase my redox potential, and that's what so that's the sort of things. Now, all this protein restriction and crap and all that, is it the protein restriction or the calorie restriction? You can see how the confounding effect can happen, because it's really hard to actually work out which one it is. Because I can actually, you can look at some studies that they've done with rats and extended life where they didn't give them much protein at all, and it was basically they weren't restricting protein, they were restricting all the other stuff, and you still got certain effects of improvement in lifespan. So, because it's a complex interaction of all these growth pathways, insulin, IGF-1, mTOR, all these things. Where is that growth going? Is the growth going into muscle mass, or is it going into adipose tissue? All these mechanisms, insulin can be used to increase your muscle mass, or for muscle protein synthesis, or can be used to basically fatten you up, increase your fat, your fat cells. So this is the problem with a lot of these sort of reductionist sort of stuff, and very hard to tease out. And it's all on rats anyway, so God almighty. And their metabolism is very completely, you can't even get them into ketosis very easily. There's all these, it's just one question after another question after another question. So the high protein may be the issue. You can have good levels of protein and still be ketogenic. You can't do it with a rat. So the physiology is different. You can't extrapolate from such a different physiology and different physiological response to basically a human. Yeah, and basically to be able to do the same experiment, because rats only live for about a couple of years, do the same thing, you'd have to basically lock somebody up and do these things for decades. It's never going to happen. So As I say to people, you can be deluded and accept certain things, but when I look at certain things, I go, well, what is the insulin to glucagon ratio? It's low. So if it's low, the pronouncement of mTOR is going to be lower in humans. So from that, you can extrapolate that it's not going to be a big issue. And that's how you have to see it. I don't believe in growing forever is a good thing. This is why I believe in fasting. Now, there's a lot of people in the carnivore community that think fasting is bad. You shouldn't fast. That's nonsense. Humans have been fasting for thousands or millions of years. They had forced fasting on them because they didn't have a fridge, they didn't have a supermarket, and they had restrictions of calories in their environment at different times. So the body's adapted and knows what it's fucking doing about in terms of availability of nutrients and all that. So when people tell you, oh, you shouldn't basically fast because it's really bad for you and all that, it's bad for your thyroid and bad for this and all that, and I'm going, no. What's bad for your thyroid is if you're not getting enough selenium. What's bad for your thyroid if you're not getting enough zinc? What's bad for your thyroid if you're not getting enough iodine? So if you're getting enough iodine in your diet, then you can basically signal your pituitary gland to actually produce more TSH. You can also basically, yeah, and there's actually another pathway, but anyway, won't go into all that sort of stuff. And pretty much you can get a certain level of T4 in the system, and then if you've got enough zinc in there and selenium, then you need both. You need slightly more selenium, but anyway, that's a side issue. Plays a slightly bigger role than zinc in the conversion of T4 to T3, the active form. So most of these things, if you're eating organ meats, you're eating eggs, you're getting a lot of these nutrients that the body requires for proper thyroid function. It's only when you're on a SAD diet or a vegan diet or vegetarian diet, you may not be getting enough of these nutrients, and then it becomes a problem. On a mixed diet, which is whole foods type mixed diet, you probably will get enough of these nutrients. But then if you're not careful, you could end up engaging the Randle cycle. And then it depends how low glycemic those things are and all that. So it becomes, quite involved in working out what effects one thing will have or not, or in that regard. But no, I think fasting, Greek Orthodox faith actually does 200 days of fasting. And there are plenty of old priests that are in their hundreds that basically can testify that longevity does not come from calorie restriction or from protein restriction, because some of those old farts will sit there and eat a whole bloody fish that big in one sitting. And I've seen them in the monasteries. So that is absolutely crap about protein restriction. But what you really need is not protein restriction. When you refeed, you need high quality nutrition to build up good tissue. And remember, when you're in a fasted state, autophagy is not continuously activated. It goes through these cycles. So your normal, as your cells clean out the garbage, as I've said in the past, and garbage is taken out of the cell, then and out of the mitochondria as well, as you take out this garbage, you basically create a pool of aminos in the bloodstream. And that will have an effect on mTOR and IGF-1 and all that. And what will happen is it will signal to the body to downregulate slightly autophagy, use those nutrients that have come out the junk, and and recycle them and use them elsewhere. And so you'll go through this sort of autophagy is sort of like a pulsatile thing that goes through even when you're fasting, and when you're doing time restricted feeding, it's still going through that phase. And even when you're feeding, you get much lower pronouncement. So the actual curve, so is going to be, between non-autophagy and little autophagy when you're eating, and depending on what sort of foods and stuff like that. So autophagy is always happening, but it's happening at a different rate. But and it goes through these cycles because you're actually putting out, and the body needs to take, build, clear out, take, build, clear out. This is what's happening all the time in your body at different rates. And when you do fasting, you actually upregulate that to a much higher rate. That's all you're doing. So you're actually cleaning out more garbage than normally that you would. And that's where the advantage of fasting comes in. But excessive breaking down of tissue and not building, and then, that can be a problem. So excessive, fasting is not a good thing, especially if you're lean. But if you've got plenty of fat to lose, well, you can probably do quite a few days without any problems, if not months. So, as long as you maintain good electrolytes, your balance, you're going to be releasing some material out of your cells as well, your fat cells. So you probably don't need a lot of the fat soluble vitamins. Why? Because you store in fat cells a lot of fat soluble vitamins. So when you do, you'll basically end up releasing a whole lot of stuff in your body. So it basically it works in that regard. But at the same time, you got to be careful with these sort of things. The body needs the nutritions to build at the appropriate times and stuff like that. And it has to be high quality stuff, which is nutrient dense. But it can recycle quite a lot if there's a lot of material there to recycle. So, all this talking today and the previous session, drying out my throat. Plus, I've got the heater on, so it's actually drying out the bloody whole area. Anyway, so be it. Basically, Fruitarian. You Fruitarian, mate. Not a good thing. Fruit is very high in deuterium. So, your mitochondria, your nanomotors, high deuterium levels bust those nanomotors. So if you have too much, especially if you're away from the tropics, so you can't deplete through UV, you will be in trouble long term and damage a lot of your mitochondria. With age, our mitochondria declines and our ability to produce more and recycle and repair is diminished. So I think you'll be aging much faster than many other people on fruit. It's the worst carbohydrate you could eat. Simple. Period. The science is there. But you can lose a lot of weight doing that. Very catabolic. No bones here. What's this? Had someone tell me that meat is junk food. God almighty. Something that's been around, being utilized for thousands and thousands of years is junk food. Are these people crazy? What sort of drugs are they on? God, a different reality from the Twilight Zone. How fucking crazy can you be? All food that either comes off a tree, comes off the ground, that actually grows in the ground, or basically walks on the ground or swims in the sea, is natural food. Junk food is something that comes out of a factory. For fuck's sake, what are these people talking about? Now, you may disagree with certain foods or food groups or whatever that come from these natural sources. That's a different argument altogether. But to argue that basically it's junk food, I mean, that's just nonsense. These people on drugs or something, fuck's sake, or they are fucking certifiable, need to be put away in some institution for madness. God almighty, some of the idiots that are out there. That was well thought out on the fasting, Harry. You're welcome. Yes, a lot of people just, they do these crazy sort of things. Your body needs, I've said it for ages, this pulsatile effect. It's some people, I know some people, because will actually fast one day, refeed heavily the next day. Some people will do 2 days and then do much bigger refeeds in the subsequent 2 days. People use different strategies, and in reality, nature, we did. Sometimes we'd come across a big damn bison, we'd kick, knock it off, sit there, and literally consume for days. And it doesn't affect you because we have a very low pH of 1.5. So when we're eating sufficient meat, our pH goes very low. And so it doesn't really matter if the meat is basically slightly starting to ferment, because it's not a problem. In our modern world, it's become a problem because we consume too many carbohydrates and too many highly alkaline type foods dilute our stomach acid, and then we don't absorb things properly and don't break them down properly, and then we have bloody issues. And then we have candida overgrowth, then we have bacterial overgrowth, because the stomach is, that stuff that comes out of the stomach is what cleanses and keeps that load down. Bacteria, that sort of stuff should remain in the colon, shouldn't be actually in the small intestine, should be in the colon. That's its place, just below the appendix, the old cecum that the actual apes had. That's where it should be. And I mean, even our appendix, like the cecum, which is a second stomach, but obviously we've lost that capacity. It's basically, it does hold part of your microbiome that you inherit from your mother. So, if mummy has been a good girl, you inherit shit, especially these generations, unfortunately. You use your beak on that. You peck the living daylights out of that veg tart. Okay, hi Harry. I cut out a lot of my usual fat intake and upped the protein intake to lose some fat. Seems to work well. Is there another way to lose fat? Fasting. Simple, just as David Fung would actually say, as Dr. Fung would actually say, just like his kid used to say, just don't eat. It's not difficult. Yeah, the side issue. I usually say that men should consume, their 1-to-1 ratio when they want to basically remain at normal sort of weight level. If you want to lose weight, obviously you've got to bring down the fat, but you don't want to bring it too low because you still need to absorb vitamins and minerals and stuff like that. So you still need a bit of fat. But what you do is, rather than what you do is you have to work out the measurements and say, okay, I'm gonna have 30% of my protein coming from different animal foods. So 30% protein. And then that 70%, 35% will come from my fat stores and 35% will come from my food. And the reason why you want that is because when you lose rapid weight and you don't have enough fat in the actual diet, what happens is you also affect and downregulate the proper functioning of your gallbladder. So you can actually start creating sludge in your gallbladder and creating gallbladder issues. This is why a lot of people that do a lot of especially vegan type diets or vegetarian diets and fasting and lose a lot of weight, what they end up doing is creating gallstone issues for themselves in the long run. But that can also happen on certain type of keto diets as well, especially when it's not done in the proper way. So you still need to normal functioning and you want that weight to come off, but not too rapidly, because of that issues. Well, there are other ways. Look, you can basically say, okay, today for 2 days, I'm going to restrict a lot of fat. And then on the third day, I'm going to add more fat in to basically keep that working properly. You could do it that way as well. That's a bit of a cheat in a way, so you can basically maintain, so you can get a bit more fat loss, plus at the same time looking after the gallbladder side. Yeah, it depends on what your goals are and stuff like that. So I hope that sort of explained things in a sort of a reasonable way. What's it? It has worked. Does work for Sean Baker? Not sure. That must be part of another conversation which I completely missed. Yep, Sean's actually. I actually am really happy that he's actually diversified his diet. He's including seafood and a whole lot of other things, and doing more things like I do, more a sort of a Mediterranean style carnivore diet, which I've sort of, where it includes much more. He even does a bit of organ meat. So, very good, of him. He's evolved quite a bit along his journey. We all do, so we all learn and stuff like that. For me, it was probably easier because I already ate those foods. So it was just basically jettison the plants more and more as I moved along the journey. So it wasn't that difficult for me. Yes. Bird brain, I just enabled that for you. All right. Okay, back to this. I've read somewhere that rubbing coconut oil, that is saturated fat, on the belly will help with breakdown of fat loss in that area. What do you think? I have no idea. It may work, but no idea. Look, it's medium chain triglycerides, and I have heard something that medium chain triglycerides seem to have an effect, some people say, of the browning effect of white tissue, of white fat. But it's usually by taking it, by ingesting it, by having it in that way. By rubbing it, don't know. Maybe it does a bit as well, but has a browning effect. But I don't really know. No idea. Good luck. You can try an experiment of one and let me know how it went. The Orthodox fasts are no joke. I'm looking at the calendar basically every Wednesday, Friday. Yeah, I know, Lent, obviously. Yeah, it's about 200 days all up if you're going to do the full gamut. Obviously, if you're a young child growing, no, you are not allowed. The priest is quite clear. Young children, pregnant women, and the frail should not be doing severe, extreme, or long fasts. It's for basically everyone else. It's one reason why, if you go back and look at most of the populations around the world, they have either calorie restricted to some extent, like the Okinawans, 80% until full. So you don't eat more than 80%. You're still hungry a bit. So that's their tradition. Plus, they do a bit of fasting. And the Sardinians do the same thing. A lot of the actual islanders are very religious in Greece. So you tend to get high longevity amongst the islanders compared to the mainlanders in Greece. Again, for that reason, because they're much more religious, they follow the faith stricter. And as a consequence, they fast a hell of a lot more than the mainland Greeks. And it's one reason why they tend to live longer. So you can't be pushing anabolic pathways forever. This sort of 6 meals a day, or you can eat buffet and crap like that and you want to live forever, for fuck's sake. That's just a joke. Longevity comes from basically cleaning out the junk now and then out of your body. And so, yep, that's part of it. It's the reason why a lot of these societies work, like the Okinawans basically say, we start the morning with pork, and we finished the day with pork. Now, pork has got the lowest insulinogenic effect. So when you combine some carbs, low glycemic carbs, with pork, the level of the actual glucagon to insulin ratio is going to be much lower. It's not going to be, it's going to be around about 6, 7. It's not going to be in the 70s that you'll get on a standard American diet. And that's the difference. So, and then with calorie restriction and some fasting that actually happens as well in that culture to achieve autophagy and cleaning out and stuff like that, yep, it explains why you get longevity. Cleaner diet, lower insulinogenic foods. So, because they're not combining beef with high glycemic stuff like somebody who eats, McDonald's meal, so, less leucine on the one hand, less highly refined carbs that push up the growth pathways. So you combine all that, you get a lot of anabolic effect. On its own, the meat is very low, 1.3 ratio. It's when and even sugar on its own is only 4, maybe a bit higher when you add with fructose and stuff like that. And certain other combinations which may end up creating a bigger pool of nutrients and create some resistance in the bloodstream, especially when you combine it with some PUFA and stuff like that in there. So it's, but it depends. And that's where you can see it when you see certain low-fat vegans, they lose weight, and those ones that are using seed oils and creating all these, sort of fake meals and fake this and fake that, they're all fattening up like mad, So, yeah. Engaging Mr. Randle himself. Okay, it's kind of what I was thinking. Good. Easy. I don't mind reclarifying things if something's not completely understood. No, not a problem whatsoever. Saladino is all about 100 grams of honey. Shit, that's a lot. I don't understand how honey fructose, which is metabolized by the liver, is supposed to be better than just straight up glucose. Look, if you were to give me 100 grams, if you were to put down 100 grams of honey and 100 grams of starch, I'd take the starch any day. I would not take the honey, because honey, having a small amount for, because it does have some antioxidants, it has some antiseptic, antimicrobial sort of effects. So if you've got a sore throat, I've got actually Manuka honey specifically for those sort of things. Not an issue. But that sort of dose is very high. And I would rather basically get it from raw milk, galactose, which converts to glucose. And glucose is much less problematic because glucose is something the body uses. That is why it has a much lower glycating effect in the body. It's sugar, refined sugar, which has got basically fructose. It's fructose which glycates. So, and it's a seasonal thing. So why would you eat something that you don't have the ability to deplete the extra deuterium from that to reduce the effect of that? I got no idea. I know that the Bart's trying to get a bit of a conversation with him. It'd be interesting, but I can tell you from my own understanding, who needs it? It's like the old thing, you need this, you need these antioxidants, you need these polyphenols and all that, and you need hormesis and shit like that. And I go, well, you can do exercise and get hormesis and upregulate glutathione without putting toxins in, plant toxins. So what are you fucking talking about? Fasting and exercise will create far more glutathione and far more nitric oxide synthesis and stuff like that, and be much more healthier for you and create less reactive oxygen species and stuff like that, compared to putting these sort of foods because there's a compound in there that creates a hormetic effect. We've got enough hormesis. We've got enough stresses in our lives. We don't need to add, we need to reduce the hormetic effects and stresses. We get enough shit in our environment to basically, for a lifetime in terms of stresses, you know, adding more stresses and supposedly this is going to be health promoting. Oh, for fuck's sake, some people need their head examined, to say the least. Anyway, I better get back to becoming amusing again. I don't like liver. Well, bad luck. Sorry, being facetious. Do I think this is fine? It's irrelevant what I think. If you don't like liver, you don't like liver. You know, but I like liver sausage. Well, have that. Easy, simple. God, that's the simplest question that I had to answer. Yeah, she is. She's a piss pot. We know. But she does buy some very good quality shit, I can tell you. So I'll take my hat off to her. Yes, very much a connoisseur of good spirits. Look, organ meats are good. But actually, a lot of people neglect some of the other organ meats. Heart. Well, heart is very high in coenzyme Q10. Coenzyme Q10 is really important for acetyl-CoA, you know, or CoA, the part between complex 1 and complex 2. You need basically, between those complexes, you need quite a bit of coenzyme Q10. So, you know, for good functioning of your mitochondria, you know, heart can be a very good food. So it's more like a, I mean, okay, some people say it's a bit on the, as far, because it's a muscle. So as a muscle meat, it is a bit, because it's got a lot of collagen fibers, which is also a good thing because, you know, you get additional collagen without having to do bone broths or anything like that. And it doesn't taste much different than other muscle meat. So I usually say, well, get it and mince it. And you've eliminated all those problems, plus you've got all the collagenous material, plus that additional coenzyme Q10. So, solution. So, don't neglect the other organs. You know, liver has a lot of nutrients, yep, but, you know, some of the others also have very important stuff. Good point, yes. Yeah, you can do that, and also put it into a burger and stuff like that in standard meat. The liver, that is what, yeah, you can do that. I've done it sometimes. I've created like liver, so it's about 25% liver and 75% just ground beef, and mixing it up, and pretty much you end up with really nice patties. Put a few herbs and spices in there. Perfect. So it's more than one way of doing meals. So, you know, try things out. Hello, good to see you. Yeah, I haven't seen gardenia in bloom for quite some time. I get a lot of comments, and I sort of, but on a live stream, it's been a while, which is good. I'm glad to. It's good to see you. Okay, Harry, can you explain the vegan bug eyes? I haven't heard anyone actually delve into that. Well, look, a lot of those things where your recessed eyes, the sockets, the actual face itself sort of narrows, the actual it's not only the eyes, but even the tissue here on your cheeks become, you know, flatter. You know, you don't have defined cheeks, which is normal, what humans should have. All that sort of stuff is just part of that breakdown that people in a very, especially fruitarians, they are the ones that actually break down quite severely in this way. It's not the others so much. It's more, you see it more with fruitarians. And it's just basically just part of that general breakdown of muscle tissue around the body in different parts. So that's all it is. And it's just obvious with fruitarians more, or the ones that have this very low fat, low glycemic type, so that it do keto, vegan, low glycemic index, vegan type, which is similar to the sort of the low glycemic vegetarian style, but a vegan style. Those sort of people, you notice that far more than any other group of vegan. So yeah, so pretty much that's it's that very extreme catabolic state. You can actually see that also in people who do this therapeutic ketosis for a very long time, and they're thin already, and they're doing this therapeutic thing, 90% fat, very little protein, and they can actually become very emaciated like that as well. So it's that sort of emaciation, sort of as you're moving towards that. That's all it is, all that sort of stuff. So once you add back the nutrients, the energy, and the protein, things sort of go back to where they were, or where they should be in terms of their genetics. So hope that explained things. So I know a lot of people make a lot of fun about it because it's good polemic by many, like vegan deterioration and many others, good polemic, but it's really the lack of sufficient energy and the lack of sufficient protein. You're breaking down your own tissue. And the other thing especially with vegans and all that, because they have very high insulin levels, they also can't access their own fat. So they end up losing a lot of their muscle, end up becoming emaciated and becoming like really emaciated with a lot of fat around their stomach that they can't actually, or around their organs and stuff like that, they can't actually access. So, and if they go back to eating and they don't have a lot of muscle, because muscle maintains higher level of metabolic rate, they fatten up very fast. I can tell you, on a standard diet, when they go back from a vegan diet, do they fatten up, because their metabolic rate is in the toilet because of loss of muscle. Muscle is the most thermogenic, the best thing you can have. The more muscle you have, the higher your metabolic rate. Simple as that. So, why would you do that to yourself? You're going to be fucked in a couple of years after. So, yeah. Why does it take 5 to 6 years for seed oils to get out of your system? Because they get incorporated. It's the turnover. For most of the cells, it takes a number of years to turn over. Different cells in different parts of the body turn over at different rates. But and that's why I say it takes about to bring down the threshold. Plus, you store PUFA in your adipose tissue as well. This is what all the like the Ray Peat fucking nutcases make a big argument about. Oh, free fatty acid from, so much free fatty acid is causing so much inflammation in your body and all blah, blah, blah and all that. They go, yeah, because the body's releasing all that PUFA that you store from seed oil. Somebody who fattens up on an animal-based diet, when they engage the Randle cycle, let's say a primitive human comes across, sees a whole lot of fruit and goes, wow, goes and pigs himself out or herself out, and also eats some meat and fat and all that, engages the Randle cycle, puts a bit of fat on, and in the winter time, they will release triglycerides and they will burn that fat off, and that will be in the forms of primarily very little PUFA, but it will be primarily things like mono types of fatty acids which come from MUFA and saturated fats, and they are much more stable. And those sort of fats burn effectively and efficiently and do not create this inflammatory effect of PUFA-free fatty acids. There is a difference. But when you've had a generation, multiple generations that have been consuming shitloads of PUFA, 50% of their calories are coming from PUFA oils, omega-6 oils, and they've stored all this shit in their adipose tissue, their fat cells, and in their skin and everywhere else around the world, the body. You've got part of the membrane is made up of these highly reactive fats. you will have also more. So that's why you have more cell senescence when you have these fats, because they're more reactive, you know. So they can, membranes can actually damage more. The cell can become more damaged, which becomes more senescent. That's what damage is. It's more senescent, and at some point of damage, eventually can't function anymore, and it's fucked, you know, and potentially could, under certain circumstances, also become cancerous from a senescent state. But we won't go to that sort of stuff. That I've said too much. But in terms of the time it takes basically to stabilize those fats with a low dose vitamin E. It has to be a palm oil based one, not the generic stuff, because that's just introducing more seed oil. You know, you don't want the shit out there. You want the Jarrow one, which is palm oil based and has a couple of milligrams, a small amount, to basically stabilize those fats. And you know, I actually also did take astaxanthin, because astaxanthin has also got the capacity in the early years, the capacity to refresh the fatty acids. But astaxanthin, you have to be very careful, because it does store, and it can store in your skin and all that. So you have to have it and then not have it for 3 days and then have it again, because it takes a while for it to be utilized, and then it takes a while for the liver to detox, to clear it out of the system. So, you know, so that's why it's astaxanthin can be a bit problematic. I've used it as a cheap method in the past when I'm on holidays or stuff like that, and I've said to other people, you know, they said, "Oh, I don't know what sort of oils are going to be cooking. What do I do?" And I go, take some astaxanthin every 3 days and a low dose vitamin E. So that's the sort of, but that doesn't solve the problem. That just basically reduces the severity of the problem in those. If you do that continuously, any amount of these sort of things are not going to really help. So, you know, do not do that. Seed oils are toxic. You should stay away from them. But it does take a number of years to basically clear out stored PUFA. So stored PUFA in the fat cells, stored PUFA in your different tissue around the body. So your body's continually recycling, pulling stuff out, you know, repairing the different parts. So even if you have a bit of oxidized PUFA somewhere, eventually the body will get around repairing that bit of tissue, take it out, put something better like a saturated fatty acid component in that membrane, and could potentially burn that or clear it out if you stabilize it properly with basically an antioxidant like vitamin E, which is a donor, an electron donor to stabilize that PUFA. Then you can basically effectively oxidize it. That means burn it off and deal with it in a sense. So, and when you lower the amount coming into the system, the body will clear it out much better, you know, because over time the material to replace some parts of the membrane will be more from saturated fats and more from monounsaturated fats, which are much more stable as parts of membranes and stuff like that. So it does take time to displace one from the other, and it depends on, you know, how long and stuff like that. Yeah, it's the Jarrow. So okay, so this is the one. Share. So that is it there. It's a mixed topical, vitamin E, and behind, there it is. So it's got 13 milligrams, 19 IUs, which is basically 90%. So it's usually 20 IUs, they say. So you'll get a bit in the diet. So that's more than enough. It's palm oil based, as you can see. So, and it's also a complex, which is really good. because a vitamin E complex is much better than the standard shit that is out there currently. Okay. And that's what you get. And that's 2 months worth. And so, it's not cheap, but it's a much better quality one. And you've only got yourself to blame if you need to fork out a bit of money to solve a problem that you created yourself. Now, it wasn't. It was because of lack of information, because sue the government, ask them to pay it for you, Unlikely. But, yeah. But, yes, it definitely takes a while to get out of your system, unfortunately. That is why I say sugar will clear out of the system within days. That's why I've always said, you put a bit of seed oil there or a bit of sugar in there, and you ask me to consume one or the other, I will consume double or triple the quantity of sugar rather than seed oils, because they take so fucking long to clear out of the system, So, and they're so damn damaging. Interested to get insight into what you eat every day. I vary my things. I basically, okay, today I had pork. I had pork chops. I had jelly and cream. That's how I finished off the day. I had two coffees, and that's about it. The day before, I had 2 small steaks, so about 400 grams, and 200 grams of halloumi, and 2 coffees, and yeah, that's about it. I think so. Yeah. And I think that's about it. And the day before that, what did I have day before that? I fasted for most of the day. I only had 1 coffee that day. Can't remember. Lamb. That's it. I had lamb. And the day before that, I remember, lamb. And the day before that, I had liver, 220 grams of liver. And the day before that, I fasted 24-hour fast. And then the day before that, but before my fast, was basically a steak. I didn't have, that was a day, I did buy the halloumi that day, but I didn't have it that day. I had brie. That's right. So I had 200 grams of brie. And how much meat did I have? Can't remember now. I think it was about 300 or 400, about something like that, grams. Yeah, so it varies. Last week I had 3 days with seafood, the previous week. And one was prawns, and the other 2 were tuna, big tuna steaks. So about 250, so 3 tuna steaks, which is it comes out at about 250 something grams. So yeah, sort of varies in that regard. But I try to get a bit of seafood. Sometimes, some weeks I'll have quite a bit of seafood. Some weeks I won't. Depends how I feel. I'm actually, tomorrow, I want to go up and get some. I'm sort of running low on prawns. I don't have a lot of prawns at the moment. And I don't have also scallops. I have very few. So I'm going to go and buy some scallops. And I may actually have scallops tomorrow. I have missed them. I haven't had scallops for a while. And so I usually cook them, and then I will put a whole lot of butter in there and melt it. And that will be the end, how I will finish it. I'll put a bit of rosemary and salt and pepper. And that's how I have my scallops tomorrow. So no jelly tomorrow because I've got none. I can't be bothered making any. So it'll just basically be probably a coffee or 2 and the scallops, and maybe if I feel like it, I may have some cheese or maybe a bit of halloumi. If I don't have halloumi, I will definitely have a glass or two of milk, of raw milk. So we'll see. So it's I haven't for what is it now? 4 days I haven't had any milk at all. So I've still got it unopened, still sitting there. The bottle of milk. So I haven't actually. I need to probably get into it before it gets too out of date, because I think the end date is about Wednesday. So sort of probably I'll have to have a glass of milk tomorrow and have another glass of milk on Tuesday and Wednesday. And hopefully, because I usually have, like a 12 ounce. So it's a 1.5 litres. It's about 500 litres per day. So I'll probably get it through it in 3 days. So, because I don't want to throw it out. So it's raw milk. It's expensive. So it varies. I do like seafood. Sometimes I'll have, if I can. When I was working, I was actually getting more. I was going down to the waterfront and getting more crustaceans and oysters as well, like raw oysters. But now I'm working from home. I'm not in the city, and I'm going, do I want to walk all the way into the city, grab the oysters, and then have to walk back with an oyster tray all the way back to home? And I'm going, nah, fuck it. So, I'll probably end up going down there one day, and I'll do a video, because I'm like I did with the Lofty Reserve. I want to do one on the waterfront, and I'll have oysters that day as well. So I'll show you guys some really nice raw oysters, Tasmanian ones, plus the waterfront. So we'll do it that way. That'll give me a reason to go down there. 2 reasons. Okay. I'm allergic to honey, so I don't. So you won't be doing it. Obviously, birds are allergic to honey. You should know that. You're not a honey bird. I had to throw it in. I couldn't help myself. In my last video, Saladino shows his glucose response. It was a great spike, but it came back very quickly in just 1 hour. Yep, we'll do it. See, fructose, even though you get a spike initially of glucose, because some of that, all sugar, it's half fructose, half. So honey will be 50% fructose, 50% glucose. Okay, it's not like refined sugar and all that. Pure fructose has a piss poor effect. Actually has lower insulin effect than what protein has. So fructose does not really raise, and this is why a lot of people said, well, insulin doesn't get raised, but they seem to forget that it's the Randle cycle that actually over exaggerates when you combine fat and sugar, and that's where the problem lies. Yeah, crazy stuff. But on its own, it won't really raise that much, for the simple reason, and it won't spike and stay for long for the same reason, because you don't have as high an insulin response. And the only reason why the blood glucose raises so high is for the simple reason is you don't get as much of an insulin response because of the fructose. But eventually then it gets, because if somebody's fat adapted and stuff like that, like he is, and he does a lot of exercise, immediately a lot of that glucose will go into glycogen, so out of the system, and the fructose that's left over will be converted to fat. And if he hasn't had a lot of big like fat bombs and shit like that, he'll just use that. So it'll be less of an issue. That where the issue comes from is the glycating effect, because it's got a higher glycating threshold than pure glucose. That's the problem, with fructose, and specifically when the clearance out of the system is worse over winter or colder months compared to summer. Now you're going into summer, so it's less of a problem if he gets out into the sun and stuff like that. But still, it's not a good thing, especially 100 grams. That's just way too much, So yeah, I don't know what he's thinking. Don't ask me. I haven't discussed it with him. Bart hasn't discussed it with him, so new idea, guys. I wouldn't do it. Did you see the debate over the retracted Lancet paper on hydroxychloroquine? No, I've sort of lost a bit of interest. I have seen some of the stuff, like the one of the actual studies that actually shows there was no effect whatsoever. It doesn't surprise me. You know, hydroxychloroquine or all these are ionophores. You know, they're not cures. I've been saying it from the beginning. Remember what I said ages ago? I said the only reason you want it, you don't want to be taking it unless you've got the virus. When you have the virus, the only reason why you want it is because you want to get zinc into the cell, because naturally a positive ion will not get into a cell. And that's a good thing. You don't want zinc going in there and interfering with normal functioning cells. Those cells need to transcript, use that RNA transcription method to transcript a whole lot of enzymes for your body to do repair, to break down food, to convert things, and a whole lot of machinery. So your DNA gets unraveled, and you do RNA transcriptions. That mechanism actually produces that. The virus goes in there through the ACE receptor and then hijacks this system. That's what you want to stop. That's when you want to use an ionophore like this, but there are safer ones. As I said, the actual safer ones are the one that I showed earlier. If you remember, which is the quercetin, as it's called. You know, so go back and you'll actually see it in the earlier part. And that is just as good an ionophore, and it doesn't have all the side effects, because that's all you want. The thing that will basically prevent a cytokine storm, and the thing that will basically have a strong your immune system will actually respond well, is primarily having in that system, simply put, you need vitamin D, sufficient vitamin D. And that's what is the most important. What is your vitamin D status? Is a hell of a lot more important than all this other stuff. And it's all nonsense and shit and stuff like that, because all the good studies are out there on vitamin D show quite clearly that respiratory infections are much more milder. But even vitamin D does not prevent an infection. Nothing can prevent an infection. What it does is it reduces the severity. That means your T cells, your killer cells, your B cells, all these ones have got vitamin D receptors. With that vitamin D, they can function better. Your macrophage, the thing that cuts the cytokines, that can be regulated, because there's actually a little thing where vitamin D actually sits on there and regulates it. When you're regulating all these systems, the immune response, you can keep the viral load down. You can use the other stuff, the zinc and quercetin, to reduce the replication in the respiratory side. And then basically you give your body enough, with good nutrition, enough time to build antibody response. So it's about delay. It's delay tactics. Just think of it. It's no different than in an army that sends forward skirmishers. What do skirmishers do? They go forward to delay the enemy, so the first echelon can get its act together and get coordinated and all that, and position and pre-position itself for the final clash. Well, same sort of concept. You know, so you need to basically get your immune system to the level where it can start, you know, producing antibodies to effectively deal with it. But initially, you want to keep the viral load down, and you want to slow the progression of the disease in the system. That's what all these strategies are all about, nothing else. And all this other stuff about how effective or whatever, it's just nonsense. Just fucking nonsense. A waste of time. Not going to save your life, you know. Keep the stuff in your toolkit, as I said. Keep the ionophore, keep the zinc, you know, lozenges or chewable stuff that have got zero. They must have zero citric acid, because citric acid inhibits the zinc to not function, properly through that receptor. So we don't want any of that. We want the so make sure you get the proper supplements that don't have any the zinc supplements that have 0 citric acid, and pretty much, yeah, you've got your system. But the key thing is vitamin D. I've been saying it from the beginning: vitamin D, vitamin D, vitamin D. Make sure your vitamin D status is good. If you're in winter, spring, or autumn, 4,000 IUs. If you're in summer, get the fuck out there and start, getting some of that natural stuff. Yep. Anyway, that's my little splurge. No, I do it. Time restricted feeding. There's nothing wrong with it in that regard. It's fine, but don't make it a religion. I think honey is nearly. Oh, look, I'm not sure exactly what is honey in combination. Yeah. Sucrose, which is pure table sugar, is. But I will check it and see what it is. Yep, your yep, is about 38. So no. So basically 32%. So honey is 38% fructose and 32% glucose. That's what it is. So it's nearly 1-to-1. No different than sucrose, table sugar, which is actually 1-to-1, 50%, 50% in that regard. So and that's basically 70% of the total honey is sugar. That's what you probably, yeah. So you may have heard it wrongly. 70% of 100 grams of honey, 70%, like 70 grams, is basically sugar. And of that sugar, 38% is fructose, 32% is glucose. And that's what I thought, that they were 50-50 or around there, So when you said 70, I'm going, did I misunderstand it, So no. Harry never. Okay. Chat. Bloody overshot. How does a clever man like Saladino get so wrong on fructose? No idea. I suspect even Bart's scratching his head on that one. So yeah, he is. I know, because I do chat with him now and then, and even he's scratching his head about a number of these things. And there's another person who we've discussed about, and he will be doing shortly a video on that person, who's putting some really strange and weird stuff out there about nutrition, and supposedly is a carnivore. So yes, so expect more from colourful stuff from Bart. I won't spoil it for you. It'll be a surprise, but it won't surprise you, but it will be a surprise that he's gone to such, he's shown an interest in some person of his past life. Okay. And eye crushing, possibly oxalate dumping. Yep. Get your citric acid up. That's a giveaway. Once you either lemon juice or citric acid, and if you notice that all these things go away, you know that the dumping has been moderated. Also, if you eat a high oxalate food, it will actually stop the dumping as well. So sometimes one can be quicker than the other. So it's, you sort of look. I haven't had a dumping now for quite some time, more than half a year. So it's been quite a while. The last time I actually had a dumping was somewhere in early January. So it's somewhere around there. It's been a while. So, but last year, I had some really nice, enjoyable days of foamy, and a lot of pain in my kidneys and the different parts of my body. So yeah, it was not enjoyable, I can tell you. And I did get citric acid. Initially, I used lemon because I couldn't until I actually bought some citric acid, and then basically, and I used even a bit of apple cider vinegar as well because that breaks, But once I was able to go through a number of stages like that, yeah, thank the fuck for that. That will teach me a lesson. All that fucking spinach that I consumed when I was doing my keto and low carb and paleo days. Fuck's sake, I paid for it last year in particular. Anyway, I know what you're going through. Believe me. Yeah, just get at this stage, because you may not have citric acid available, lemon, apple cider vinegar, which is easier at hand. Use it. Try and bring it down. Try and bring down the effects at least. If it's not really doing it, take some oxalate foods to stop the dumping until you can get your citric acid levels up. And also the other thing is you need to get your remember that MSM sulfur. You will deplete a lot of sulfur, and that causes a lot of problems in your body. So get yourself a sulfur supplement as well. Jarrow has a big amount. You can actually get the MSM sulfur because you need to resulfonate your body. Very important. So anyway. Hey, they don't use their beak. Look, yeah, I know. Spinach, superfood. What a toss. If I could go back and tell myself, don't put yourself through 1 year of misery, I would have gone back and told myself not to do that. So yeah, last year was a bit of a bitch of a year in terms of oxalate dumping left, right, and centre, and shitloads of. And I know Bart went through something similar, so he's had a lot of fun with oxalates as well. He's much better now, but yeah, I probably did it harder than many other people. I just basically pushed through and said, "Fuck it, I'm gonna just dump and use a lot of citric acid and stuff like that," and that's what I did. And so, I cleared it out much quicker in that regard. I know other people can't, look, you don't have to do it like I did. If you can't, do it slower. That's fine. These things are meant to test us in some regards. Shit happens. What do you think of the ideal slow metabolism slows age? Yeah, it does. If you're basically you got a lower metabolic rate, yep, you will basically age slower. But also you will downregulate slightly your thyroid. You'll also increase your reverse T3. You'll also basically you'll basically your telomeres will slow down in their breakdown, and obviously your cell division will slow down, but also your reproductive capacity will also diminish slightly. So you can't have longevity. You're either fucking like mad and breeding like mad, or you're basically slowing some of these things down to get longevity. So that's your choice. I can't tell you what to do. I've decided to go for the longevity thing for myself. So slowing down slightly the metabolic rate. And that happens just basically from calorie restriction, fasting, stuff like that. obviously where your metabolic rate is going to be will be dependent on how much muscle you've got. So what your level of slowing down is going to be different from mine. So if I've got more muscle than you, my metabolic rate is going to be higher, but potentially, even though it's higher as a metabolic rate, it could be slower overall, if you try and get my drift. So in terms of cell division and all these other things. So, you know, if somebody's got the equivalent, the same muscle mass, the same tissue and all that, and somebody's got a lower metabolism, they will live longer than somebody that's got a higher metabolism. But if you're like this, because you've got different levels of, muscle tissue, the ratio of that person who's slower may be exactly the same. That's just because you've got more muscle. But you're basically still not doing the same level of cell division that somebody who may have a lower metabolic rate but less muscle tissue. So normally if they had more muscle tissue, they'd have a higher metabolic rate than you, but they are doing more cell division. So it's a bit more complex, the actual story. It's not, but for two equal twins, one who, will basically, with a slow metabolic rate, will live longer than the other twin in that regard. But, it's more nuanced, how much muscle mass do you have? It's more, what your level will be and what the ratio will be between cell division type other biological functions in regards to how much it's getting raised by your actual muscle component of your body as well. So it's, when you take all these different fractions and parts and then you calculate it, you get a very different picture. I don't know how you can actually describe it any other way, and whether there is even a fucking formula you can actually generate to, because it's not a simple thing. But you will slow down aging if you're a twin and one's got higher metabolism and one's got lower metabolism, and the one with the lower, will always live longer. But the other nuanced part is what's your muscle compared to somebody else. So maybe slightly higher or the same. So two people can have the same metabolism, but this person's going to live longer because a lot of that's coming from not cell division and that sort of normal biological processes, but actually just coming from just using more energy in their muscles because the muscles are bigger. So it's a bit more complicated in that way. But I hope that was simple enough for people to understand. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. You could explain it more sciencey about all these different tissues, the way they function, all these different ratios and all that. But that just confused the living daylights out of everyone. So the twin example, and that sort of, I hope that sort of explained it, that you've got those two elements that you need to sort of get into your head, that, it's cell division and all that activity that also has a certain level of metabolic rate component, and then the muscle has another component. And so it's those two, you would bring them together and you get, and then in comparison to somebody else, and you can, anyway, probably confuses even more. Sorry. Starting to confuse myself. Retinoid creams are the rage in skincare. Yeah, I'd rather just eat liver, eggs, and things like that. And it's cheaper. Fuck yes. The last part of the question. Do I think consuming liver can have the same effects on skin? Yep. Prime example. So, yeah, I wouldn't put that crap because it's got a whole lot of other shit in it anyway. So, do thank you. People, just because they don't want to eat a nutrient rich diet of animal foods. They want to just basically go and buy expensive creams and put them on. Yes, people have got their priorities very wrong. Okay. Animal products will always be more bioavailable. Yep, exactly. Better to consume them than slap them on your body. Where do you get your palm oil-based vitamin E? I just showed it before. Where is it? Where the hell is that damn thing? I'll actually show you the other one as well. And share. And there it is, that one there. See, right behind here, palm oil. That's what it looks like. I will throw that in. There it is. There's a link. So you can grab it from that link there. And this is the MSM sulfur. So there's a bit there. And I will throw that in there as well. So for all you monkeys that are oxalate dumping, because you will deplete sulfur in your body, which is very important. Anyway, so there are the links. Go grab them. Go check them out. So back to the fun. Waiting on astaxanthin, detox instead of stored. Look, if you're actually astaxanthin, only look, it's good, but I wouldn't actually supplement. I'll just use the vitamin E for the next 5 to 6 years. And the astaxanthin is what I used for my cheat or holidays. I try now to minimize the requirement for it. Having too much can bioaccumulate in your skin, not a good thing, and can behave as a pro-oxidant if it accumulates too much. So you got to be very careful with these sort of things. The quantity that's in fish is there specifically. It's a bit like in animal foods, you have a certain level of vitamin E, not a lot, but a certain amount bound to the PUFA component of that food to stabilize that fat. That's there, not excessive amounts to create imbalances and all that. It's the same thing with that astaxanthin. It's a certain amount. Supplements tend to have too much. So that's why I always say, if you're going to take one supplement over 3 days, simply put, if you're on holidays, but you shouldn't be basically eating PUFA, because it still gets stored. You're still putting stuff in your body, in your membranes. You're incorporating in your membranes things that can be reactive. So you don't want to put those things in your membranes at all. You want to remove them, both the stored stuff and the membrane stuff, over using vitamin E as an electron donor that will sort out these fatty acids in your 6-year transition away from PUFA and health, in that regard. But astaxanthin is there more for, people have asked me, how do I use it? And I go, look, if you're going to go on holidays and you're not sure in the restaurant what they're actually using, then, I usually say just have a steak, avoid any of the other stuff. And they go, I'd like to have a few chips and a few other things. And I go, okay, then have astaxanthin. but it's not something I recommend. It's something that I'm just trying to help you rather than make things worse. But, don't come back to me and say, oh, I took astaxanthin, but I still got sick. Well, I mean, it's for the occasional cheat here or there on holidays. It's not for basically a lifetime of, knocking down the seed shit and then expecting astaxanthin to save you. It's not going to happen. Got to be realistic, guys. Yeah, they're pretty good. Yep, very reliable, and never had an issue with them. Look, as you improve your nutrition, what I've heard is that more, because presbyopia is in tribal societies and populations like that, it's far more pronounced. It's less pronounced, and it seems to have increased with two things: both the diet deteriorating, and the other thing is with people being indoors for far too long, and it more relating to the circadian rhythms and also the light exposure, because light is really important, and the light signaling from actual natural light, being outdoors continuously, it'll be one of the most protective things for your eyes. But it's something which is not practical. That's the problem. So if you can try and get more out there, have it ground yourself to get more negative ions, so that negative charge into your system through negative ions, to basically improve your health, and pretty much blue blocking glasses, things like that. All these things should help improve your eyesight in general. So, and keep away from PUFA, because PUFA does a lot of damage to your eyesight. Blue light in the evening also does that. It dumps too much DHA in the eye and in other cells, a lot of arachidonic acids, which is important for cell repair. So, yep, keep that stuff. Get your sleep properly, get blue blocking glasses, do those sort of things. Anyway, I saw a post on Facebook yesterday, a heap of people raving about Nutralex or whatever, demonizing butter, tried to tell them otherwise. So what the fuck is that? Never heard of it, honestly. Yeah, it must be a new American food or whatever, processed food. Or maybe I live a sheltered life. Okay, so it's some sort of bloody spread. Oh, yeah, I know the one. Yeah, I've seen that in the supermarket. It's a margarine. God almighty. Seed oil margarine. Oh, God. Oh. God damn. Are people still eating that shit and promoting it? God almighty. Oh. Gotta be kidding me. They're still eating this shit. Founded in 1932. Yeah. Probably got the patent rights from Crisco. So what have they? So it's a margarine manufacturer. Okay. Almost political. Yeah. Not surprised. Act similar to butter in 1936. The law was introduced mandating margarine be saffron color. So they must have been using a saffron coloring at the time, but now they use chemicals because saffron's more expensive. Increase that. Managed to get quota increase marginally. Doesn't really say what the actual ingredients, but the giveaway is hold on. For vegetarians and vegans, without animal products. So that's quite clearly, yeah, it's definitely the bad margarine, which is basically from seed oils. So, fucking hell, that crap. And people are still promoting that shit. Oh my God. What do you say? What do you fucking say? Crazy. G'day, Necro Kitty. It's good to see you, Kitty. Kitty must have just got up out of bed. Yeah, must be an early one. You must get up early. These Texan girls, they get up very early. So what's that? Cheap at your site, Harry. 38 in the Netherlands. Oh, really? Huh. Look, it has to do with supply and demand in different parts of the world. So, yeah, it can vary. I have been known in the past to use virtual private networks to basically circumvent the pricing of different companies. Yeah, I know. I do things like that now and then. I've spoiled the... Hey, how did you know I go down to the waterfront and take a shit? Fuck's sake, are you spying on me? You dirty, dirty bird. Contaminating the waterways. Yeah, I know. Bad. I'm awful. Hyperpigmentation. Sunbathing in the morning and evening. A good compromise. Don't want wrinkles. I've been out, with high doses of retinol and MK4, and I've been out for 5-6 hours in the sun, and I hardly get burnt. And the other little neat trick, which is an inhibitor of melanin, so you don't, which some people use, which a certain dosage of vitamin C as well. Yeah, you can play around, yeah. Anyway, people don't need to do that sort of crap. It's interesting. I've played around with a few things. I was looking for something to fall asleep and watch. I wanted. So I'm your bedtime story, am I? Now, little kitty, relax, take a deep breath, and sing after me. 1 little kitty, 2 little kitties, 3 little kitties, and 4 little kitties. Is that sort of working for you? You did wake up. You needed a bit of support. Freeze the milk. It can actually affect slightly the fatty acids when you freeze milk for a very long, especially for a long time, or when it actually thaws out, it just, especially raw milk, it slightly changes the taste. So nah, I'll give that a miss. That approach. I know Jarrett does it a bit. He doesn't mind, but yeah, he's easy to please. Live dangerously. Have plenty of ice cream. Oops. There it is. Okay, back to sanity. Fresh or organic, yeah. Oh, these pricings. Okay. £1. €1, I mean. So yeah, different pricings around different places. So yes. You sort of just have to shop around and try and find different sources. You really enjoyed my chimp talk. Yep. I'm glad you did. Yes. You know, at the end of the day, when the chimps are down, when the chips are down, they didn't go for the fruit. They didn't go into the trees to eat more leaves. They created tools to hunt more animals. You know, all animals in nature prioritize caloric density of food because you don't know where your next meal is going to come from. You don't have a supermarket. You know, if you don't eat the most nutrient-dense food and try and get as much nutrition in, which animal products are more nutrient-dense, then you're going to be on starvation foods. And the chimps know that. They're not stupid. You know, all animals instinctively go for nutrient density. As I say, in the oceans where life started in the oceans, the overwhelming majority, small crustaceans, small little fish types may eat a bit of sea grass and stuff like that. But the majority of fish, the majority of species within the ecosystem eat other animals, eat other fish or other animals in that environment. Life started in the oceans and then ventured out onto the ground, and those sort of things. And if you look at it, that is what the all animals have been eating. All animals from the beginning. And even when we look at ruminants, what do? They don't eat grass. They poop it out. They just take in the grass and create and utilize it to basically get the bacteria, the protozoa, or the enzyme, the yeasts, and all these other small microorganisms. They feast on all these fibers. They extract some fats and some proteins of that. They fatten up. The cow poops out all the other stuff. And in the final stomach, which is the acidic stomach, all ruminants have an acidic stomach, the last stomach. They take these things and extract from these organisms that have grown in large numbers. They will then utilize that animal food as their food. So in their final stomach, they're basically carnivorous, all ruminants. So sugar is not something which is very available in nature. It's very rare, unless you basically take certain plants and hybridize them. The other thing I say basically to people is, well, they can't use tubers and they can't use legumes. Why? Because tubers and legumes raw are poisonous. They don't have fire, so they can't utilize fire to extract additional. Our ancestors, when they used as starvation foods, when they had control of fire, they were able to access some of these things. It's the reason why the ApoE genes changed as well. For that reason, I'm giving too much away about that video, but anyway. So the chimps don't have the capacity to use fire. So how are they going to get their nutrient-dense food? They're going to go. They're going to innovate, create tools, and fucking hunt, scavenge and hunt. They can't scavenge. Why? Because their pH isn't low enough. In the future, they may, as they eat more animal foods, their pH will lower, and as that lowering happens, and more foods that are slightly older and all that, that will slowly give genetic advantage to those monkeys, and then they'll be able to scavenge more and get more, and so start evolving. That is part of evolution. It's an interaction with your environment, developing tools, accessing other foods and stuff like that, and slowly changing your biology over time. It takes a very long time, thousands of years, but it does happen. And what the chimps are demonstrating is, in a savanna environment, they behaved very similar. Man-made savanna environment, yes, but they behave very similar to our early hominins in a similar environment. And that is what is so surprising and so interesting. And it literally just puts a big fucking dagger right through the argument of all those veg tarts and idiots out there. because we are demonstrating evolution and tool adaptation and development in our closest relative ancestor in terms of the hominids, which is all the great apes and all that, their closest relative of the great apes, and demonstrating quite clearly that they not only had the capacity, they just didn't have the necessity. Changing the environment created the necessity, and they were able to adapt. So yes, it's really interesting stuff. And I hope you guys spread the message and share that video of Bart's, the chat that I have, because we need to get that sort of stuff out. People are unaware of that. They need to wake up to themselves. They need to realize, what things need to be prioritized in the diet. And it's not fucking sugar or a whole lot of honey. Anyway, I don't like being nasty towards other carnivores, as simple as that. I think, we can disagree on certain things, and I think he's made wrong choices, but anyway, maybe he's copying the other carnivore that consumes also sugar from honey, so we won't mention that name. Anyway, getting late. Oh well, God. It's nearly 9 o'clock. You're in WA. It's bloody early for you. Here it's nearly 9 o'clock. Why are you bitching? Getting late. Don't concern yourself about others. Sorry. I will take my nasty card and rip it up. Okay, so where are we? Got the different points and everything else. Good morning. Or good evening to me. Okay, have you seen the Dutch Association study between deficiency and bad coronavirus 19 outcomes? No, I haven't actually. Can you email me a link? Because I haven't actually looked at it. Not at all. But it doesn't surprise me, because I know with other respiratory infections, vitamin D and MK4 are really important. So it does not surprise me. And a lot of people are even more deficient in MK4 than what they are with vitamin D. That's how bad it is. And they wonder why they're having all these calcium issues and calcium spurs and arthritic pain in their joints and all sorts of issues because of low vitamin MK4. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me that because MK4 plays a very important role in lungs as well with vitamin D, and to a lesser extent retinol, where retinol and MK4 play a bigger role in skin. So different tissues, different collagen types, different the different MK, the K2s and retinol and vitamin D have different interactions and different regulatory effects on different collagen types. Anyway, blurted all that out. So yeah, I would be very interested. Please email it to me. Thank you. Or put in the comments down here a link to it, and I'll grab it that way. Okay. And what was this? I have 2 local farmers sell. I have A2, A1, and milk choices. Look, unless you're actually having a problem with A1, yep, go for A2. But I don't have a A1, A2 doesn't affect me either way. At the end of the day, all these proteins basically break down to if you've got good stomach acid to basically amino acids. Unless you've got leaky gut or stuff like that, and you basically those sort of issues, then you shouldn't be having dairy anyway until you fix your leaky gut. So yeah, it's like all the gurus love all this. Oh yeah, it's MTHFR, riboflavin deficiency. Fix it, goes away. You don't need the guru. These casein and all that. get your fucking stomach acid properly, and you won't have that issue as well. You know, you'll break down everything to basic amino acids. You know, it's just, they all bloody want to sell you something or basically tell you, oh, we can fix this with take this shit and take that shit. They never solve your problem. Some of these naturopathic doctors are just as bad as the MDs pushing drugs. You know, so fuck me. Sorry, I said another fuck. Bad boy. I'm being bad today, aren't I? Yes. Oops. Overshot. Oh, fuck me. Where'd I overshoot? God, we got so many questions. God, do you guys realize it's nearly 3 hours? We've got 10 more minutes. I have to go really quickly through all this sort of stuff. And see whether I've missed anything. Yeah, magnesium citrate, a better version of magnesium, but Epsom salts are even better. To occasionally have a bath in there and to contemplate existence. And gingivitis, brushing teeth, and all that sort of those sort of issues. Just eat appropriately, stuff like that. I think I said something in the other one about that sort of stuff. So go and check my other video stream. Carb cycling, not really into it, to be honest. I get some carbs from milk. Yeah, that's good enough from dairy for me. So I think it's overrated. It's all about this thyroid thing and all that. If you've got good nutrients and all that, your thyroid will be. Look, I was in ketosis in winter, and I was going around in shorts. Okay. If you get enough selenium, you get enough of the nutrients that the thyroid requires to function properly, you are not going to be cold. You know, you do not need carbohydrates. Inuit that live in the Arctic Ocean don't need fucking carbohydrates to warm up. Okay, then they traverse shitloads of kilometers. You just need the nutrients to basically have the thyroid working properly. If it's not working properly, doesn't matter how much. Most people that have got a hypothyroidism are fucking carb eaters. You know, why the fuck do you need, these sort of stupid low carb doctors that talk about carb cycling? They fucking should stick a banana up their fucking ass. Absolute nonsense, reductionist crap. That's all it is. All this reductionist madness. God almighty. Rather than telling people to eat proper nutrient-dense food, get yourself a bit of liver. That will increase your iodine. It'll increase your selenium. Eggs will also do that. Iodine and all that. Seafood. Yeah. Sorry, I didn't want to take it out. I'm not taking it out. I'm just taking it out about these sort of things that people are recommending, which is all this sort of reductionist nonsense. Our ancestors didn't fucking require this, and they still were fine, strong. They were out working in the wildernesses, cutting down trees and doing all sorts of things. So yeah, it's just drives me up the wall. All this crap constantly that people are peddling out there. Okay, we're getting down. Pre-shrunk. Who shrunk? You shrunk. Well, at least you're not a skunk. Yes, nasty things. Very nasty things. They are basically the cholesterol of plants. And they are nasty, nasty shit. They go, if you consume over a certain threshold, they will go into your red blood cells and you'll absorb some of them. And the more you absorb of these little fuckers, usually the body tries to get rid of them, detox, get rid of them in the gut and get them out in the feces. But if you consume very little cholesterol, plant-based cholesterol, so animal-based cholesterol, and you consume a lot of phytosterols and even supplement like some fuckers do, you will end up pushing a lot of these fucking sterols into your bloodstream and then incorporating them into red blood cells. When red blood cells get that, they don't have flexibility. They become stiff. If they're too stiff, they can't go through much narrower blood vessels. That means some of those blood vessels not going to get oxygen. You know, hypoxia, damage to over too long hypoxia in certain areas, you're going to actually damage some tissue. It's in the heart. You could potentially damage some heart tissue. Could cause some heart issues, like that fucking idiot who was the head of the Vegetarian Association. He was basically 40 years old and died because he was taking statins and then taking all this sort of shit as well to basically bulletproof himself. Yeah, gave himself a heart attack at 40. Another fucking idiot. And then you had McGregor on the other side saying, "Oh, it wasn't that. It was all this. It wasn't getting enough B12 and all this." And I'm going, what? There's plenty of fucking sad dieters out there that have plenty of low levels of B12 and they don't die. They don't drop dead from a heart attack at 40. Okay? McGregor's talking shit, making up stories. The real reason is because this guy was basically literally damaging his red blood cells by putting so much phytosterol, plant-based cholesterol into his bloodstream and incorporating it into his red blood cells and not oxygenating sufficiently those peripheral and areas of the body where there are much thinner blood vessels. Fucking stupid, crazy vegan. What do you expect? Does he? Okay. I haven't heard. Well, then he's smart. He's on the money. It's the one reason why I eliminated a couple of years back. I eliminated, all foods that were high in phytosterols deliberately for that reason. So, because I started seeing some studies. Yes, they were in rats. Yes, but red blood cells are no different than human blood cells. So, yes, they were higher doses. But when I look at the McGregor video, which was the guy, that video was done about 6 years ago, and then I did research into this guy, and that's how I found out about this sort of shit that he was doing. So, and that's when I started shifting, initially it didn't click into my head, but a couple of years later, as I was starting to reduce the plants, I started shifting away from all these plant type things, got rid of the spinach and all that sort of shit after a couple of kidney stones and all that. And then started realizing this sort of stuff. But, if he's basically, that guy is actually saying as well the same stuff, he's right. He's probably looked at the same studies. He's spot on. Yeah, definitely shit it is. And McGregor somebody needs to fucking take a baseball bat to that fuck who's basically just telling vegtards out there they're literally telling them to fucking take this sort of shit. That's what McGregor and people like that, because you know what? It also lowers your libido, so you don't breed as much. Because these people don't want you to breathe. They want you to basically take a snip and all this sort of stuff. This is what the sort of shit that McGregor sort of promotes. And he's promoting this sort of stuff to young people, potentially giving them heart attack or other type of, peripheral sort of issues, health issues. Fucking hell. He's a criminal, absolute criminal, that piece of shit. Yeah, okay. He has a good presentation on statins and PCSK9s. Yep. So yeah, by inhibiting PCSK9s, you can really push down. See, that's the enzyme that gets inhibited. That's what the drugs do. Yeah. Oh, I'll check it out. Yeah, I will check it out. It's crazy. It's the new statins, the PCSK9s. Oh, fuck's sake. You know, if you want to make yourself sick, let's make yourself even sicker. Ooh, these people are crazy. Grounding is great. It actually reduces platelet aggregation and fibrinogen type levels substantially, anywhere between 3 and 4-fold, depending which part, whether it's the platelet aggregation or the fibrinogen. Also, retinol will actually reduce fibrinogen as well. So, fat soluble vitamin retinol will also reduce fibrinogen quite a bit. But grounding seems to do it a bit more. Yeah. But even when it comes to fibrinogen, even L-citrulline, which creates L-arginine, and L-arginine creates eNOS, nitric oxide synthesis, that also has a reduction in platelet aggregation. And so you can combine a lot of these sort of things to get less stickiness, less sugar in your diet, less stickiness in your blood vessels as well. So even though, and if you more sulfur, you'll sulfonate the pericellular matrix and you'll create a negative charge, which means that even if there is a bit of platelet aggregation, they won't stick. So the level of, the type of viscousness is going to be slightly different than if there's sugar there gluing those things together, than rather than just bouncing off each other in close proximity. If you get what I mean. Anyway. So it's more nuanced in that regard. We've said a lot tonight, haven't we? We've covered a lot. He's a cardiologist. Okay. Low carb practitioner. Okay. So he's not carnivore. Okay. Fair enough. I'm sort of, hopefully he's not into plants and too much plants. I suspect if he's talking about phytoesterols that are bad, I suspect he's probably starting to jettison and moving towards the carnivore community. Yep. Once people realize that, they get it in their head. They go, oh, shit, maybe I should be eating so many vegetables. So he's probably moving in that direction, which is good. We need more people, enlightened people in the carnivore community. Kitty's asleep whenever gets the comments. Well, I put her to sleep. It worked. That's what she wanted. So she even got a little song from me. What else do you guys want? I can't look. I can't. I can't play for the life of me. A guitar. Go and see Bart about that. He'll sing you a lullaby. Especially if he's had some beer. That'll definitely that'll work. You use Barcase and bedtime story. See, it works. I told you. Wasn't expecting to hear thing about astaxanthin. Looks like amazing stuff to me. Mitochondrial antioxidant. Was hoping that would accumulate in the membrane and thus increase cell resilience. Well, you don't want too much accumulating. So in that regard, so it has its place, especially with PUFA, but I would rather try to steer people, get it naturally from fish, the astaxanthin, try to minimize PUFA in your diet because it's just too reactive, so that's the best way. But if circumstances, family-wise, you're going somewhere, holiday, blah, 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 all this sort of stuff, and you want to sort of both protect yourself and your family, yep, take it with you. 1 every 3 days. For younger children, teenagers, probably 1 every. It's a really hard one, that one. You can't even get low doses, which is Yeah, really. Yeah, dosing on for younger kids, maybe one every 4 days, and try and have a break in between, and then the other 4 days sort of thing. But yeah, I can't really give you doses for young kids. I'm just saying they have lower requirements. But if it's only for a week and it's once, not going to be an issue. Once or twice within a fortnight while they're on holidays, it won't be really an issue. Once they get back, they'll be eating proper food at home. So, yep. It's always, if you can't find, it's like for a long time, I was lucky I was able to find a specific, the Jarrow. Initially, before I actually was able to find, I actually purchased from one of the health foods, City Organic. I would basically go and buy their coconut and palm oil sort of, it was a mix. It was basically, what do they call it? The sort of stuff they use for cookies and stuff like that. It's got a name for it. I can't think at the moment, too late. And it's used for cooking and baking and stuff like that, this combination. And I actually used that to get my vitamin E from the palm oil in it, because it was 50% palm oil, 50% coconut oil. And that's what I used. And then I came across the Jarrow thing, and then I started just using that supplement because, it was just more convenient, simple as that. And it was palm oil based, so it was more stable, less of an issue. Yep. Yep. Like little fucking rabbits. And they're not even cute. Yep. They need to eat around the clock, those vegans, and they're not even cute. What's this? Why can't I find my glasses or my wine? God damn it. You've had too much. Way too much. Now, go in the corner and spank yourself. That be a lesson to you. Yeah, magical stuff. I'm glad you did. You did. I like the chimps in savannah. Yeah, very interesting. Yep, exactly. Protein fat ratio is amusing in animals. Look, if you look at the first one that I did with the first chat on chimps with Bart, it's their protein requirement is much higher than their fat requirement. So, many people say animal protein is what built big brains. No, that's nonsense. It's stupid. No, big brains were built by fat. So monkeys, like chimps, have very low storage. It's 0.005, and the females, it's 0 something. I can't remember now. It's in that study that I actually showed. So it's fuck all, so they use glycolytic pathways. They will use any fat, or they will get rid of it in their feces. So if they can't consume it, but that's why they utilize more protein. And that's why they're also restricted in terms of distance, because they don't have enough fat storage to go over long distances. So they're more contained in the environment. And this has been my belief, that in the beginning, when we separated from the chimps, some of these close relatives, when they broke off from the actual chimps, or the direct ancestor of the chimps and us, basically they found themselves in a savanna environment, potentially because of climate change at the time or whatever. And so they were forced into developing the tools to hunt animals. And then as they hunted more animals and more fattier animals, they started changing, evolving, and getting bigger brains. Then the requirement for more fat storage to support those bigger brains, all these sort of coming together. So because from that fat, you can get ketones, you can get glycerol, which is the fat backbone of the triglyceride, and you can get fatty acids. So you've got 3 sources of of energy that can be utilized in that way. And so this is the development, that evolutionary development. The chimps are at this very early age. It would take them thousands and thousands of years. You can actually see they've been forced to use tools, and they can't basically venture long distances because of those constraints in their physiology. So the constraint to an environment which is a forest environment, because they don't have enough adipose tissue to venture longer distances. So they're constrained to that environment. And this is why they also have more warfare, because they can't venture longer distances. What these chimps are doing is, by hunting and all that, they're actually enabling themselves, one, to venture longer distances, because now they've got tools to hunt on the move. They don't use guards around their territory anymore to guard against other chimps. Now they bunch together because they need to protect themselves against big cats in an open environment. So their whole relationship is changing. In a normal chimp environment, there are more females and less males. Dominant males that are basically, dominating a number of females. That's changing. Here, it's nearly a one-to-one in terms of females. They're more equal. They're more empathetic. They're more cooperative, less selfish. So they're starting to have, without even the evolutionary stuff yet happening, they're starting to have behaviors which are very similar to early hominins. That's the biggest message is that. Everybody sort of says, oh, they're making these tools and all that. No, I know that they're doing that out of necessity. But what is that? All that is driving all these other epigenetic changes in behavior. It sort of explains our own evolution, in a way. It's like a fast track. It's been forced on them, but we can actually see it. Okay, if it happens to a close relative in this way, maybe this is how it happened to us. So that's the insight, that's the nuance side, It's something with these fucking academics who are more focused on this narrow reductionist way of viewing the world don't even see this. I see it, but they don't, because they can't think in this very complex way. I mean, my mind just runs like mad, pulling information like mad, combining it in all sorts of different ways. It's just the way my brain works. Probably because I read so much philosophy when I was 15 and 16, and I've got a very analytical mind in that way. But these people can't see this at all, which is unfortunate, because they're doing the research. Anyway, another rant. Shut up, Harry. We need to tidy this up. Link to N15 isotope studies. Look, yeah, I've done plenty of those. In regards to what? Done an ancient Greek one, which is on mine, about N15. You're talking about Neanderthals, early hominins and all that. I will do. You're not going to steal my thunder. You will have to wait. I will be doing, because remember, I had a long series to do, because with Bart, when I first started, I started doing the Mediterranean and then doing some of the other stuff and all that. And my whole idea was basically to do this N15 isotope analysis and go from the chimps onwards and all this sort of stuff. And that was my whole thing, to outlay a whole story, an epic story, from early days right up to early civilization and beyond. And so that's still my sort of focus, these sort of little history things, because they give us a lot of insight in understanding where we've come from and potentially where we're going. So these are the sort of things that really fascinate me and interest me. And I've had plenty of conversation with Bart, and I want to continue that. So you will have to wait. Yep. So I've covered quite a few things today. G'day, Luke. Good to see you, mate. You must have just got out. Did you wet the bed, mate? And that's a bad screen monitor. Now, get yourself a tub, fill it up with lard, and go in there. And just joking. Actually, milk would be better. Milk bath. Oh. Anyway, I feel like an Egyptian god in milk. Actually, Cleopatra used to do bathe in milk. Okay, not Neanderthals. It was about the other stuff. Yep, it will be. We will be looking at all that sort of stuff. You know too much. Have you guys been communicating? Well, what a busy night it's been. Yes, we got through quite a bit of material. We've covered a whole lot of things. Discussed a whole lot of things. Yep. Yeah, it's great stuff. It's really nice. I have occasionally. Oops. No, I'm not angry. I'm just overexcitable. Oops. FFS is early morning, the bunch of ruffians. Good to see you anyway, mate. You know, I'm about to just finish, so you can always just refresh and watch it from the beginning. It just, because it's over 3 hours, it takes a bit of time to refresh on YouTube anyway, so you'll have to wait a few minutes. You could go to the toilet and then pop back and actually see the rest. Yeah, we got through quite a bit of material tonight. I was surprised. I thought we wouldn't get through so much, but yeah, far more than we did in the morning. Yes. Anyway, guys, I had great fun with all of yous. A bit of light humor and some information here and there on a number of different varied subjects and all that. Yeah, I actually enjoyed it because there was far more questions than my last Euro, where I did the Euro live. There were less questions, and I was hoping that there'd be a bit more questions this time to, you know, cover quite a number of different areas and points and stuff out there, and what people are saying and doing out there, and some of the stuff about honey and all that sort of stuff, because it needs to be discussed. So yes, in that regard. Yes, it's 9:20 here, or nearly 9:20. Oh God. Now we've got troll on troll. Troll 1 attacking troll 2. You're welcome, mate. Yeah, we had fun. I enjoyed it. Heaps of fun. Woof, woof, woof. Anyway, see you guys. Take care. Have a good remaining weekend, or whatever, how many hours you got left and all that. I've got a public holiday tomorrow, which is great. I'm gonna go and see a mate of mine and probably go for a walk and do some other shit, and also I'll do that one video the cortisol one, so I'll definitely do that, get that out of the way, and I'll see if I can get a second one done. No promises, but you never know, your luck. But even if I do a second one tomorrow, it will actually appear on Tuesday, the next day. So in that regard, Okay, I'll keep a note on that for next time. Yes, it's been a long session. It's definitely been a long session today, with pretty much the earlier part and all that. So yeah, look, sometimes it depends. You know, sometimes I really get fired up and I go, oh yeah, I can go for longer, and I sort of have to remind myself and constrain myself because there's so many hours that I have to dedicate for each day, for each weekend and stuff like that with StreamYard and all that. I am investigating one of the others. I looked at Zoom. We had a few problems. I even tried it with Bart, and it didn't really impress me. And I did one other like a captured video with Zoom, and that was the one that I did with the methylation, and I couldn't get some of the aspect ratios and all that didn't sort of settle properly and all that. And I'm going, do I want to use it again? So yeah, I'm still sort of looking at that. I may end up using it for tomorrow's just to get that one out of the way, and then may go back to my other applications and see whether I can configure them slightly different to get the results that I need when I'm doing stuff and editing stuff later and all that. So it's, yeah, never easy with these things, especially when they're all free tools. You have to do so much. They're not like out of the box where you pay them, and they're much they're a bit more time consuming, the ones that are the free versions, because it's all manual setting up and everything else. Yes. Anyway, I'm out of here. Thanks, guys. Good night. Good day. Have fun, and see you guys next week, or some of you guys. Take care.